If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
On March 22, 2010, 23-year-old Shane Donahue left his parents' home in Nokesville, Virginia, and told them that he loved them. Shane, who didn't drive at the time, got a ride with his buddy, Timothy Hickerson. Within about 10 minutes, both of Shane's cell phones were turned off, and Shane was never seen nor heard from again. Over the past 14 years, there have been many allegations made by both the Donahue and Hickerson families, but little in the way of justice for Shane. Then, on September 17, 2024, Tim Hickerson was arrested for the murder of Shane Donahue. It was a day that the Donahue family had been waiting for over 14 years, but it would prove to be the beginning of an arduous journey, not the end. On November 13, 2025, the trial of Timothy Hickerson began, and what followed stunned the community. When a person goes missing, there's a special kind of pain in the not knowing. I want to tell the stories of those who never came home. Today, we're going to talk about the trial of Tim Hickerson. I'm Kona Gallagher.
And I'm Ethan Flick.
And this is And Then They Were Gone. Welcome back, everyone.
Welcome back.
Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Kona.
And I'm Ethan.
And we're the husband and wife team behind this podcast. Each week, I tell you the story of an unsolved missing persons case. Ethan doesn't know anything about the case going into the episode, and he's here to provide his reactions and questions in real time, hopefully asking some of the same ones you have at home. Now, obviously, this episode's going to be a little different. We've done 2 episodes on the Shane Donahue case. In fact, he's one of the very first stories that we covered all the way back in season 1 of the podcast in 2020. We also did an update episode in 2024 when Tim Hickerson was arrested. And while we do update episodes when we can, this one is going to be different. Even though we've covered trials on here before, like the ones in the Kristen Smart and Orrin and Orson West cases, this is the first one that I've actually attended in person. Over the past year, I've been at every hearing in this case, and I was in the courtroom for every day of the trial. So instead of a normal script, today's episode is going to be directly from the notes I took in the courtroom. And my goal here is to talk about what I witnessed and figure out how we got to where we are today. And, you and I have talked about what I was seeing in court a little bit. I tried not to talk too much about it, but it was just so crazy that I had to come home and just
vent.
Yeah. So you do know a little, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah. I mean, after hearing your reactions to the trial, I really want more information. I want to get dig into this and really understand what happened in this trial.
Yeah, me too, honestly. And I was there. So yeah, but before we get started, we want to take a moment to thank our amazing Patreon supporters: Gina M, C Queen, Leanne T, Robin, Chris S, Trisha S, and Lisa D. We're so grateful for your support.
Thank you all so much.
If you'd like to join them, you can head over to our Patreon and sign up at any level, just starting at $2 a month. You'll get access to ad-free episodes and a free copy of the ebook that I wrote. But now, with all of that out of the way, let's get into the trial of Timothy Hickerson. Now, I'm not really going to get into a lot of the pretrial hearings that I attended. If you're interested in what happened there, you can go to our social media accounts because I did videos on a lot of those. But there's just so much. This episode would be like 3 days long. So where I am going to start, though, is the day before the trial on November 12th, because there was a lot going on, and it really kind of set the tone for what we were going to see, which was a very contentious proceeding. The day before the trial started was Tim Hickerson's arraignment. And typically at this point, that's just more of a formality. You know, that's when the defendant gets up and formally enters their plea.
Right.
And he was arrested a year ago. Like, he's had a lawyer for a year. Like, they've obviously been talking about all this. So again, there are usually not a lot of surprises, but instead, what we got that morning was Brandon Sloan, Tim Hickerson's attorney, trying to get witnesses excluded from the trial and accusing the prosecution of Brady violations.
Right at the beginning like that?
Yeah, like during the arraignment, the day before trial. So the first thing that I have in my notes is, quote, "All we get is a never-ending stream of nonsense," end quote. And that was Sloan talking about the prosecution. So like that's kind of where we are, right? Now, there are a couple of key witnesses that the prosecution wanted to call, and one is Emily Kinnaman, who was a friend/love interest of Shane Donahue's at the time of his disappearance.
Okay.
It's common for either side to interview witnesses that they're planning to call, you know, prior to trial, just to, you know, have them practice answering the questions and, you know, make sure everything is straight, basically. So on November 6th, the prosecution did a recorded interview with Emily Kinnaman. And what happened was apparently Emily gave conflicting statements. So she testified in the preliminary hearing, which was, I believe, back in April. And apparently some of the statements she made during that under oath were different from some of the statements that she made in this November 6th interview. Prosecution realized that this could be a potential Brady violation, so they handed over the recording to the defense. However, the defense is saying that they kind of sat on it for a little while and handed it over to them, like basically right before trial. And November 6th was already a week before trial. So
Right.
I think it was a few days after that they actually gave it to them.
Yeah, which doesn't leave the defense a whole lot of time to review it and
Right.
figure out any...
The recording was over 2 hours long, from what I'm remembering. So yeah, there was a lot to it.
Yeah.
And they were basically saying that the Commonwealth was minimally complying with discovery rules. Like, yeah, they turned it over, but not in a timely fashion. Matthew Sweet, who was the lead attorney for the Commonwealth on this case, got up and said that this was all just a lot of name calling from the defense and it was all form and no substance. And so he said they met with Emily and did the interview. And at the time of the interview, he's saying that he didn't realize that there were inconsistencies. It was only later when he was preparing over the weekend and he was going through phone records that basically Emily had said in the interview that she had only spoken to Tim Hickerson on the phone once or twice, but when he was going through the call logs, he saw many calls between them.
Okay.
And so he says as soon as he realized that, he did turn it over to defense. And it's not that he was sitting on it. He just didn't know that there were inconsistencies before that. Same thing with another person, Craig Matong, who was going to be a prosecution witness, but he also gave inconsistent statements. So that recording was also turned over to the defense.
Not a great way to start on the prosecution's
it really
part.
wasn't. And the defense was also accusing them of coaching the witnesses and tampering with witnesses, basically.
Oh, wow.
Which Sweet said, you know, there was nothing to support those accusations. And, you know, and again, this is the day before the trial is starting. The judge decided not to dismiss the case. And we also happened to learn during this that, and this was kind of as an aside, no formal plea bargain had been offered to Timothy Hickerson
Really?
at any point up to this.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And again, it was just an aside in the courtroom, but I was like, that seems huge and kind of surprising.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the Donahue family wouldn't want any kind of plea, but
right.
Like, you got to offer it.
Yeah, I was really surprised that it hadn't even been offered.
Yeah, I mean, you have to offer it just to, at the very least, like to try to find out where Shane is.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah. After that, like I said, the judge decided to proceed with the case. So then we were able to move on to jury selection. The big thing in this case, and we've talked about it in previous episodes, is that at the Donahue's house on Aiden Road, there has been a sign out there since Shane went missing that counts the days since he was last seen. And they've been maintaining this for, obviously at this point, 15 years. And it's huge, and it's something that is very visible in the area. So that was like a big question during voir dire is, hey, have you seen this sign?
Yeah, how are you going to get an unbiased jury of your peers?
Yeah, and especially once Tim was arrested and let out on bail, they put up a second sign saying that basically there was a killer free, and they had Tim Hickerson's mugshot on it.
Wow.
Now, several people had reported seeing the sign because, again, if you're just in that area of Nokesville, it's impossible to miss. And so there were some people who were dismissed based on that. Another, big question, of course, was, do you know the Donahue family? Do you know the Hickerson family? Do you know? And they named off some of the witnesses because obviously you can't have jury members who know any of the people involved.
Right.
And I thought just with the length of time the Hickersons and the Donahues had been in the area, I thought more people would actually get dismissed based on that, but they weren't. There was only like one or two. There also weren't a lot of people who were dismissed because they already knew about the case. And, I've always thought, now this case really hasn't gotten a lot of national attention, but
you would think local attention.
It's gotten, a fair amount of local attention. Yeah, not a lot of mainstream media up to this point. Like since the case got reopened last year, there's been a lot more. But I remember, when we were first doing this episode in 2020, most of what I based it on was just forum posts, like the Fairfax Underground stuff. Like it was a lot of rumor and very little facts out there about this. But yeah, like there are very few people who said they knew anything about this case.
That's interesting. I mean, especially considering how the Donahues kind of portrayed the Hickerson family as like this well-known,
right, powerful
family in Nokesville, and then nobody knows anything about this case.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
like
weird.
One woman got dismissed because like one of her kids went to school with one of the Hickerson siblings or whatever. But that's really about it. Now, the important thing to keep in mind, because we're going to have to circle back to that whole notion of the Hickerson family being like powerful in Nokesville. But one thing to keep in mind is this is the Prince William County courtroom. And Prince William County is a really big county.
It is.
And there are a lot of places that are not Nokesville in Prince William County and are nowhere near Nokesville. And like Nokesville is a small town.
Yeah.
And so if somebody lives in Manassas or Haymarket or wherever, it's actually not that surprising that they wouldn't know any of these people involved personally, It's just, but it's easy to forget that sometimes. So at the end of the jury selection, we ended up with 15 jurors, 12 on the regular jury and 3 alternates. So then on the 13th, the trial is actually going to begin, except it's not yet because the defense is bringing up their motion to strike Emily Kinnaman from the witness list again, because the judge actually did reserve her ruling on that until she could listen to the recording.
Oh, okay.
So she listened to the recording overnight. Then we had this other motion. Basically, the defense is saying that based on what she said in that interview, there was more information about the drug business that Shane was running and kind of the culture within. You already know this if you've listened to other episodes, but Shane Donahue was a low-level pill dealer. Basically, he had gotten injured in high school while playing football and had been prescribed opioids. He then, like so many other people, became addicted to opioids, and then that evolved into him selling. So by this time, 2010, when he was in his early 20s, he did other jobs, but he was also just a low-level pill dealer. Now, obviously, anytime you're in this drug culture, as they called it, like you're going to be encountering a lot of shady people.
Right.
So the defense's argument was that they could have investigated more alternate suspects based on what Emily brought up in this 11-6 interview. But, because they got this like 2 days before trial, they couldn't, right?
Oh, okay. I see.
The defense also said that the prosecution was trying to coach her into giving evidence that's inadmissible and tried to coach her into downplaying her own drug use.
I guess that would just go to credibility of the witness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so the Commonwealth, of course, objected and said, quote, "This is disturbing, Judge." Denied all of those accusations. Now, the judge said that she didn't hear any coaching or Brady violations on the tape. So she basically said that she wasn't going to exclude Emily Kinnaman as a witness, and we were finally able to start. Now, the opening statement started with Matthew Sweet doing them for the prosecution. Both sides gave rather short opening statements. I took note of the time that they started and the time that they ended, and Sweet's opening statement was about 24 minutes long. Now, opening statements are, of course, important because it's not evidence, but it's your first opportunity to really shape the narrative of the crime and really give the jury a sense of not only what you believe happened, what you're going to prove, but also giving them a preview into the witnesses and the evidence that they're going to hear.
Right.
It's all about building context for what's going to come. And it's incredibly important. Sweet did a decent job with it. I think he could have hit some points harder, but basically he started out with, quote, "Motive means opportunity and consciousness of guilt. Those are the 4 pillars that make up the evidence in this case," end quote. And he said that they all lead back to Timothy Hickerson. He also made a point of calling Shane Tim's friend several times throughout this.
Is that painting him? Is that trying to like paint Shane in more of a likable light?
Maybe. And yeah, just maybe painting him as more of like an innocent victim. Like this isn't a guy who killed his drug dealer. This is a guy who killed his friend.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that was kind of what he was going for. And then he talked about what I just mentioned about how Shane got hurt playing football and that's how his addiction started. And I thought that, this was good that they were just laying that all out there, not dancing around the fact that Shane was dealing with an opioid addiction and he was selling, because those are 2 facts that really nobody disputes. And so dancing around it or trying to downplay it, like it isn't going to serve them.
Right.
So he said that he obtained the pills that he sold both legally and illegally. He still had a prescription for himself, but he would also buy additional pills from other people. And he said, quote, "Shane lived in the gray area of dependency and profit," end quote. Now, Tim, again, was supposed to be Shane's friend, but it's difficult to maintain friends in the drug subculture. He also said that Tim got a gun for Shane.
Oh, interesting.
And this is important, and this kind of comes up later, so we need to remember this, that he brings this up in his opening argument. One of the charges that Tim was charged with is burglary, and this is based on a burglary that occurred at Shane's house 2 days prior to his disappearance on March 20th, 2010. The prosecution alleged that Tim Hickerson went into Shane's house through an unlocked door, stole 3 pills from a bowl on his mantle. The prosecution said in the opening argument that Shane was angry about this burglary that had just happened, which is reasonable. I mean, it's normal to be angry about somebody breaking into your house, especially when they're supposed to be a friend. And at the time, Tim also owed Shane $500 for a drug debt, basically.
And then now he owes him more.
Right, yeah, now he stole these 3 pills too. So what Sweet's arguing is, in terms of motive, is that Tim owed Shane money, Shane was mad about the burglary, and there was some kind of confrontation that led to Shane's death. He said, quote, "When Tim Hickerson saw his opportunity, he struck like lightning," end quote. And he said, quote, "Burglary, murder, concealing a dead body, that's how you wipe out a drug debt," end quote.
It's very dramatic.
I know. He also talked a little bit about the case being reopened back in the spring of 2024 and that when the new Detective Seekley, investigated, he said that all roads led back to Tim Hickerson. Now, going back to motive, he said that cash motivates a crime. So in addition to the $500 that Tim Hickerson owed Shane and the pills he stole from him, Shane had just finished a job replacing ceiling tiles in an airport hangar, and he had been paid $3,000 for that job. And so he said that Shane had cash at the time of his disappearance, and so robbery could have gone to motive as well. He also talked about the witnesses that he was going to call, one of whom was Daniel Gould. He was a friend of Shane's and an acquaintance of Tim's. He was with Shane on the morning of March 22nd, 2010. He gave Shane a ride because Shane didn't drive at the time. They went to Walmart so Shane could pick up a pair of contacts. They went to Target, and they went back to Shane's house. While they were at Shane's house, Tim came over, and Daniel said that he felt something wasn't right. And so he left.
Okay.
He also talked about Emily Kinnaman, the witness who, was causing all of this kerfluffle leading up to the trial. He said that she tried to steer Shane and Tim away from each other, and that she was hanging out on the evening of March 21st, so the night before he disappeared. She also said that Shane was becoming drug sick, and I think it's because the idea is that the pills that Tim stole were the last ones that Shane had.
Oh, okay. So he's coming down.
Yeah. Emily and Shane had a plan to get more pills on March 23rd. And so this is Sweet laying out the timeline, basically. So that was his plan on the 23rd. On the 24th, the Donahues began to think that something was wrong because Shane was somebody who would either come over or talk to them like every day. And they didn't hear from him at all on the 23rd. They called him, couldn't get in touch with him. Phone went to voicemail. So they called the police and reported him missing on March 24th, which is 2 days after he was last seen. Detective Wing was the original investigator on that case. Sweet said that he asked Tim, "Where's Shane?" And Tim just said, "I don't know. Nothing more." There was no concern, curiosity, or cooperation. And then Sweet went on to say that this empty denial was consciousness of guilt. And so then he asked, "Where is Shane?" Only one person in this courtroom can answer that. Shane's disappearance and death wasn't an accident. He was not a runaway. He didn't go off and start a life somewhere. Tim Hickerson took what he wanted from Shane. He took his pills and he took his life.
It's a good opening statement.
Yeah. So Mark Eisenstein is the one who gave the opening statement for the defense. And it was a little bit shorter. This one was under 20 minutes, about 18 minutes. And he opened up saying that Tim Hickerson is a husband, son, and a friend. He is presumed innocent in a court of law, and he is innocent of this crime. And he said that the evidence will show that the prosecution cannot meet the burden of proof in this case. And that's really what his opening statements focused on. It didn't focus on a defense in that,
per se, yeah.
In that like, oh no, it couldn't have been Tim because he was in, another state at the time or whatever it was.
Yeah.
They didn't focus on that. They strictly focused on the fact that the prosecution didn't have enough evidence to prove these charges. And he said that, they can't use speculation and conjecture, which is what so much of this case has been based on for the past 15 years. And then he kind of got into the weeds a little bit with the difference in the standard of evidence between civil and criminal cases.
Okay.
Like basically how it's a higher burden in criminal cases, but it's like none of these jury members have been on a jury in a civil case. Like they don't.
Or even if they had, those things will be talked about in the written instructions to the jury.
Yeah, so he got into the weeds on this a little bit, I thought. But basically said if it's possible or likely that Tim did it, you have to find him not guilty because possible or likely isn't enough.
Right.
He also said that the evidence will not answer what happened to Shane after Tim dropped him off at home. There's no direct evidence of murder, manner of death, or a weapon. Those are fatal to the Commonwealth's case. He also said that there's no direct, real evidence that Shane Donahue is even dead or that there was a murder. And he did say that Shane and Tim were friends, but Shane was secretive. And he also was taking more drugs than what Sweet portrayed.
Okay.
He also said that Shane and Tim lived less than a mile apart, which is alluding to the cell phone evidence that is later presented.
Gotcha.
He also said that on that trip to Walmart on the morning of March 22nd, one of the things that Shane bought in addition to new contacts was a new prepaid cell phone. And that phone has never been recovered. On the afternoon of March 22nd, when Tim was driving Shane around after they met at Shane's house, that they went to the Donahue's home, to Shane's parents' home, where Tim tried to help Shane fix an ATV that was there. Because Tim's just like a handy guy, basically.
Gotcha.
His family owns an electrical contracting company, and so he knew how to do that. I think the job he was doing when he was arrested in Florida was like installing floors or something along those lines. But he has a lot of just experience and things like that. So he was helping Shane fix his ATV. And then he says that Tim dropped Shane off at home and left. There's no blood, no forensics, no weapon. And in 2014, the Prince William County Police, who was the investigative agency, told Northern Virginia Magazine that Shane was, quote, just poof, gone, end quote. And that nothing has changed since that interview was given 10 years ago. Then he's talking about the witnesses, and he says, does a person's memory get better after 15 years?
It's a valid point.
Yeah. And then he goes again back to the cell phone evidence, saying that when the prosecution presents this evidence, and it allegedly shows that Shane was at Timothy's house after he was supposed to have been dropped off at his own house, that it's because they connected to the same tower because they lived so close, that it didn't actually show that at all.
Okay.
And then he was asking, did Shane actually have more phones? Because, okay, maybe these phones connected wherever, but he bought a phone that morning. There are more phones out there that could potentially give more information in terms of Shane's whereabouts after the afternoon of March 22nd. And then he also talked about what was found in Shane's house versus what was not, and inconsistencies there. So that was basically the defense's opening statements. Hey there, I want to take a moment to recommend another podcast called Mind of a Monster, The Killer Nurse. Mind of a Monster is a podcast series from ID that dives into the minds of notorious serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and more. This season, they're exploring the chilling story of Kristen Gilbert, a nurse who murders 4 of her patients between 1989 and 1995, and is suspected of killing dozens more. Criminal psychologist Dr. Michelle Ward takes us inside Kristen's twisted mind, uncovering why she kills and how she manages to do it right in front of her colleagues. The entire season is out now, so you can binge it wherever you get your podcasts. I listened to Mind of a Monster, The Killer Nurse, and it was really interesting. It's obviously not the type of case that we do on this show, so it was fascinating to get a look into what could cause a person to do something like that. I binged the whole thing too, and now you can listen to Mind of a Monster, The Killer Nurse, wherever you get your podcasts. Did you know that iron deficiency is one of the most common, yet often overlooked nutritional gaps affecting 1 in 3 adults, especially women? I'm a lifelong vegetarian, and so getting enough iron has been a constant struggle. There are plenty of times when I tried to give blood and I couldn't because my iron was too low, especially in my 20s when my diet consisted of mostly pasta. So I have had to take iron supplements at various times in my life. So when Ciderol from Nutra wanted to advertise with us, it was a no-brainer. It's a premium iron supplement powered by patented sucrosomial technology, which helps your body absorb 3 to 4 times more iron while avoiding the common side effects of traditional iron supplements like nausea and constipation. It's vegan and gluten-free and 100% allergen-free and free from artificial colorants. So if you feel like no matter how much you rest, you're still running on empty, you're not alone. Over 2 million people have already discovered Ciderol, and it could be the support you've been looking for. So head to pharmanutra-us.com and use code ATTWG for 10% off your first order of Citral. That's PHARMANUTRA-US.com, promo code ATTWG for 10% off today. Let me tell you about the online cannabis company that's revolutionizing how we deal with life's challenges, from sleepless nights to stress-filled days. Mood.com has created an entire line of functional gummies that target specific health concerns with 100% federally legal THC blends. Even better, you can get 20% off your first order at Mood.com with promo code ATTWG. If you're like me, then you have different family members who have different ailments, and I've recommended Mood to all of them. I legitimately, before recording this, I told my mom about Mood, and she's going to make her first order. Because they have gummies for all sorts of things, for pain relief, for sleeping, for just improving your mood. Their gummies are specially blended and each one feels different. The Sleepy Time gummies knock me out in 15 minutes flat with no hangovers, no grogginess, and I wake up feeling amazing. And each gummy is crafted using federally legal cannabis grown on small, family-owned American farms. Best of all, not only does Mood stand behind everything with an industry-leading 100-day satisfaction guarantee, but, as I mentioned, listeners get 20% off their first order with code ATTWG. So head to Mood.com, browse their amazing selection of functional gummies, and find the perfect gummy for whatever you're dealing with. And remember to use promo code ATTWG at checkout to save 20% on your first order. Then it was finally time for witnesses to be called. Now, the first witness was pretty normal. Like, it didn't really score points for either side. It was Lieutenant Dennis Jensen with the Prince William County Police. At the time, Lieutenant Jensen was a patrol officer, and he was the one who first took the missing persons report. So he was not a detective. So he's not the one who did the actual investigation. That was Detective Brian Wing, who we mentioned earlier. But Jensen was basically the first person on the scene.
Okay.
So he took Shane's missing persons report on March 24th. Donna Donahue, Shane's mother, gave Lieutenant Jensen one cell phone number for Shane, and that's one that ends in 9052. But remember, Shane had two phones on him when he disappeared, at least, yeah. She also provided names of people who may have information, including Emily Kinnaman. Tony Matong is another person who Donna said may know where Shane is. Now, Jensen actually found both of them. They were together at Bungalow Ale House, but they said they had no idea where Shane was and they hadn't talked to him. Police were also able to ping the cell phone that Donna gave them the information for, and they were able to do a general search of that area in cruisers. They also contacted hospitals and jails, see if he was there, and went to Shane's house. He said that when they were at Shane's house, nothing appeared to be missing. It was fairly well put together, and there wasn't anything that jumped out at them as a clue. They also spoke with Shane's neighbors, who said they hadn't seen him. They spoke with Shane's landlord, who also hadn't seen him. They also showed Lieutenant Jensen photos of Shane's house that were taken that day, but they didn't really show them to us, so I can't really tell you what was in them.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
But I would assume that they showed the jury.
Well, not then.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. So, I don't know how much the jury was actually able to see during this. So I don't know if the jury had any idea, what the point of any of that was.
Yeah.
And that's really going to be a recurring theme as we go on. Now, Eisenstein did the cross-examination and showed Jensen two different photos of Shane's house. Jensen said that he believed it looked the same and that it did not appear to be ransacked because his TV and his Xbox were where they normally would be. The house was messy, but he doesn't recall drawers being open, and he would have noted it in his report if they were. He does recall family telling them that there was a safe on the table, but doesn't specifically remember seeing it. He also said that the Donahue family was afraid that Shane was in danger, but they were not forthcoming as to why. And it does feel as if the Donahues were really trying to downplay the whole drug angle at the beginning of this, which from a family perspective, I completely understand.
Well, yeah, because they want the police to investigate their missing kid.
Yeah.
And not focus on the fact that he's a drug user.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, they could be like, oh, well, he's just on a bender.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, and that's what Eisenstein was trying to get across, is that basically the Donahues were being withholding. And, maybe they were, but I completely understand why. But importantly, he also said that the family had already been in Shane's house prior to police. So he was basically saying that the Donahues may have taken some things, may have moved some things, and again, in an effort to cover some of this stuff up. He also asked Jensen if the family had been contacted about Shane possibly being kidnapped.
Oh.
And that was a huge moment, because I was like, wait, what? Because I had never heard anything about a potential kidnapping in all the years that, I've been looking into this case. And Jensen didn't recall, but apparently it was Emily Kinnaman who told the family this, that he might have been kidnapped, and it was in Jensen's report.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. The family also told Jensen that Shane owned one revolver but left out other guns that he owned. He also did not find the phone that Shane had bought that morning on the 22nd, nor did he find a little black book, which the defense was saying was a drug ledger. The drug ledger keeps on coming up because in the defense's mind, that drug ledger is full of alternate suspects.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they think it was deliberately hidden, and it would have been really important for police, investigators, everybody to have. Now, on redirect, we learned about this whole kidnapping thing that Emily said, and we learned that it was apparently just a dark joke. Donna said that Emily said something about kidnapping, but she was laughing. And it was kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe he's been kidnapped. Because at the time, Emily probably wasn't thinking that anything serious was going on with Shane, that maybe he was on a bender somewhere, that that he was going to show up.
Right.
She was like 21 at the time, and I don't think she had any inkling at that moment that her friend would still be missing 15 years later.
Right.
So the kidnapping thing ended up not being that big of a deal. Then, this is where everything started to fall apart. The prosecution called Detective Brian Wing, who was the lead detective on Shane's case.
At the time, right?
At the time, in 2010. Kathleen Bilton, who is the second Commonwealth's attorney on this case, is the one who did the questioning here. And basically, they just started off with the basics of, when did he get the case and what were the first things that he did. Detective Wing says that he himself conducted about 9 or 10 interviews, which does not seem like a lot to me.
No, it's not.
He interviewed some people multiple times, so I think he conducted more than that. But what I got from that was 9 or 10 different people he spoke with. He said he received numerous leads about Shane's location, but none panned out. They were able to get the phone records for both of Shane's known phones and also for Tim Hickerson's phone. Because, again, Tim Hickerson was the last person seen with Shane Donahue, so he was a person of interest from the very beginning. He investigated this case for about a year to a year and a half before it was handed over to the cold case unit. He also said that he interviewed Tim Hickerson several times. One interview in particular, we had heard clips from in the preliminary hearing. So I already kind of had an idea of what was on it, but obviously the jury didn't. So Bilton played that recording. Now, what I was expecting was kind of what we got in the preliminary, which was we would hear excerpts of it. And we had Detective Wing on the stand. So what I thought we were going to hear is excerpt 1. Stop, and then question about what we heard, and, giving some context behind it, asking additional questions, things like that. That is not what we got. Instead, they pressed play on the full recording, which was about 30 minutes long, 20 to 30 minutes. It was a recording made in 2010. The quality was terrible. It was played over the speakers in the courtroom, but there was a ton of white noise. And Tim Hickerson was in active addiction at the time. Nobody's disputing that. He was actively addicted to pills at the time of this interview. In my very unprofessional opinion, he sounded like he could have been high at the time of the interview.
It's a good possibility.
Because he was like slurring his words almost. Like he was hard to understand. In addition, he just has a very thick Virginia accent, which I just find hard to understand in general.
I didn't think, I know you said Nokesville was rural. I didn't think it was like that.
And again, not everybody has that. But the few times I've heard Tim Hickerson speak in court, like he's hard to understand. So all of that led to a recording that like I could barely keep up with in terms of what was being said.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they, like you said, stop at certain points to give the jury an understanding of what they're listening to?
Right, because there's
making sure that everybody understood what was being said, too.
Right, because I cannot imagine that they did. And I was watching them, the jury, when this was being played, and like nobody was falling asleep or anything, but there were definitely some glazed over looks in that jury box because they had no context for what they were listening to at all. And again, I just can't imagine that they even understood half of it. In this interview, which I did hear, and partially because I knew it was in this interview, is that Tim told Detective Wing that he took 3 pills from the mantle in Shane's house.
So he admitted to the burglary.
He admitted to the burglary. He also texted Craig Mitong a lot that day. He also said that Shane had been wanting a gun for a while, and then he meandered onto this like 7-minute aside about guns. And my notes say it was hard to hear and jury doesn't have context, and neither did I. I had no idea what, if anything, this had to do with anything. Then there was a huge moment that, again, I think the jury might have missed, which is Detective Wing asks Tim, if we were to search your family's property, is Shane Donahue's body there? To which Tim replied, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be?
It shouldn't be.
In other words, he's kind of saying his body isn't on the farm.
Like,
because it's somewhere else.
Yeah. And I don't even know. It's just such a wild thing to say. And then he follows it up with, well, you guys already did the search. Kind of like, so if you didn't find it then, it shouldn't be there.
Wow. So the prosecution doesn't say anything at that point about that statement?
No. And I don't know if the jury heard it.
Wow.
They just kept going. Let it play.
That is a huge missed opportunity.
It was a huge missed opportunity. And I was sitting there feeling like I was going insane. Because I was like, there has to be some legal reason why they didn't stop the tape, why they're not doing what we had just been talking about, playing excerpts and then asking questions.
Also, so he says this and then the detective doesn't follow up with any more questions on that by like clarification, like during the interview.
No, not really.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm sitting across from somebody asking them questions about this and that's their response, it shouldn't be. Whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean it shouldn't be?
Yeah.
Like,
and I think he might have asked that, and that led to him saying, I mean, you guys already did the search. But like there wasn't anything beyond that.
If I'm the detective on this case, I'm asking a lot more follow-ups to that. Because that is not it's the response should have been no.
Of course not.
Of course not.
Like, what?
Wow.
So yeah, because the next thing I have in my notes isn't any follow-up from Detective Wing. It's Tim saying that Shane being missing is a big discussion around Nokesville.
Wow.
And then he goes right into some woman named Stephanie who is having a sexual relationship with Shane. I have no idea who Stephanie is.
Yeah. I mean, what the hell does that even have to do with it?
No idea. The other thing I want to say is that during this interview, both of the Commonwealth attorneys are speaking with another attorney or clerk or somebody, and they've got their box of files, and they're like going through their box of files, talking to this guy, asking him to go get other stuff or, whatever. So they're not even fucking listening to it.
Wow.
They seem completely distracted. I almost felt like I was like a kid where you're putting on a movie to keep me quiet, like, while you guys are doing your thing. Like, it was just so weird. And to me, it just showed the jury that what's happening isn't important right now.
Yeah. I mean, this seems like lack of preparation on the Commonwealth's
Which
part.
is insane.
Yeah.
Because not only have they had a year to prepare for the trial, they've had 15 fucking years to prepare for this.
Yeah.
I could not understand what I was watching in that courtroom that day. I was so confused. The recording ends, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe that wasn't the best way to approach it, but now she's going to ask him questions about what we just listened to.
Bring up certain points.
Talk about some of the other interviews that he did with Tim. Maybe we're going to hear excerpts from those. I'm like, okay, let's go. Like, let's really learn about this investigation. Because what we know about the investigation so far is it's the basics. Like I said,
Interviewed 9 people,
got the phone records, like whatever. And I'm like, okay, let's go. We're getting into it. Bilton got up there and said, no further questions.
Wow.
Like,
no follow-up at all.
Nothing. No context, no follow-up, no clarity whatsoever.
Wow.
And so I cannot imagine that anyone on the jury had any idea what the hell just happened.
So now I'm curious as to what the cross is going to be, because at this point,
let me tell you, it was short.
I mean, if I'm the defense attorney, I'm not going to bring up any of those points we just talked about.
Hell no.
I would just I don't think I would ask very many questions at all.
He didn't. So it was Eisenstein who did the cross. They're talking about a thumb drive which has the phone records on it. And he said, can you be sure that the material on this thumb drive is the same as what you received in 2010? Which, he couldn't really. He said that it's consistent with it, but,
who knows?
Right?
Yeah.
He then was trying to make the point that this was a really big investigation at the time, and it was a really big investigation that didn't result in Tim being arrested. So how come he got arrested 14 years later?
Not only didn't get arrested for the murder of Shane Donahue.
Yeah.
Also didn't get arrested for the burglary.
He admitted
to which he admitted.
Yeah. Didn't arrest him for shit.
Nothing.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
So he shows them this picture of this war room, basically. And he's like, trying to say, oh, you have this big investigation. And Detective Wing is like, oh, that actually wasn't my investigation. That was when I gave it to the cold case unit later. A little bit of a swing and a miss on the defense's side there. But again, nothing that hurt them too bad.
They can just bring that up whenever they interview or they cross the cold case detective.
Yeah. Then they bring up Dwayne Spence. Now, while Tim Hickerson was the last person seen with Shane Donahue, Dwayne Spence was the last person to speak with Shane Donahue on the phone.
And when was the timing of this? Before Shane left with Tim?
I don't know if it might have been while they were out.
Okay.
But it was before his disappearance. It wasn't like,
obviously
the night of the 22nd or anything like that, right? So he was the last person to speak with Shane, and we know this based on the phone records. But when Detective Wing interviewed him, Dwayne Spence said that he hadn't talked to Shane for a week or more before he went missing. So, which is
a lie.
A lie.
Right.
Wing just said, I don't remember interviewing that guy. And Eisenstein's like, okay, well, if I showed you your report, would that refresh your memory? And so you showed him a report, and he's like, okay, yeah, but I don't remember the content of the interview. And he's like, okay, well, if I played you a recording of the interview, would that refresh your memory?
Jesus.
So he played an excerpt of the interview, and Detective Wing was like, yeah, no, I don't remember that. And Eisenstein was like, the recording you just listened to, you don't remember it? He's like, I mean, I recognize my voice on it, but I don't remember that conversation. Eisenstein accused Wing of bias. And he said that he wasn't being truthful when he said he didn't recall that conversation. And he was basically like, you recall the conversation with Tim from the same time period.
Right.
How is this one completely escaped your memory?
You only interviewed 9 people.
Yeah, right.
For this case.
But Wing was like, nope, sorry, don't remember. So they couldn't question him on that interview any further.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of wild.
Wow. I mean, yeah, that's kind of proving Eisenstein's point.
A little.
Yeah, oh, sorry. don't remember that. Only the only interview I remember doing was with Tim.
Yeah. And it was interesting. So at that point, the judge instructed the jury to leave.
Oh.
Because the attorneys were like, what is happening? And they had Wing leave the courtroom too. The defense is like, basically, like I said, accused Wing of bias and saying that he wasn't being truthful. And I will say, I think that this wasn't clear in my notes, but this did happen after the jury left, those accusations.
Yeah.
And after Wing left. The reason this was such a big deal is because Dwayne Spence is dead. So he can't be called in to testify about this. So Wing is the only way this conversation can be brought in.
Holy shit. Wow. All
so,
right.
Yeah, so that was pretty tense and pretty wild.
Yeah.
But after that, Wing was done. So they let him go subject to recall, basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, thank God, maybe the prosecution will understand how much they biffed this and like bring him back and actually ask some questions. So I was like, okay, well, maybe this could be good. The holidays are almost here, and if you still have names on your list, don't panic. Uncommon Goods makes holiday shopping stress-free and joyful with thousands of one-of-a-kind gifts you can't find anywhere else. You'll discover presents that feel meaningful and personal, never rushed or last minute. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S., so every gift feels special and thoughtfully chosen. Here are a few things that I'm getting. Unlock the Beer Escape Room. It's a cute little cage that you could put a 6-pack of beer in, and then you have to do an escape room to get the code to open the cage. I am absolutely getting this for my brother-in-law because this is in his wheelhouse in every way. The DIY root beer science kit I'm getting for my 8-year-old because he has recently discovered root beer and he likes learning. So this is going to be a really fun project for the both of us. So don't wait. Make this holiday the year you give something truly unforgettable. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ATTWG. That's uncommongoods.com/ATTWG for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary. Am I the only one who's kind of weirded out by the number of chemicals in cleaning products these days? So I started looking into what I was actually using around the house, and my laundry detergent turned out to be the worst offender. It's full of harsh chemicals like UV brighteners, dyes, and preservatives, which can wreck your skin or trigger allergic reactions. That's why I switched to EarthBreeze. It looks like a dryer sheet, but it's actually laundry detergent. Just toss the sheet into the washer with your clothes and that's it. No pouring, no mess, and no plastic jug. My laundry comes out fresh, soft, and clean without unnecessary chemicals. And right now, you can try EarthBreeze for up to 40% off with free gifts at earthbreeze.com/ATTWG. That's earthbreeze.com/ATTWG to get up to 40% off with free gifts on your first order. The human body is fascinating, but did you know that scientists are now saying that your gut is the cornerstone of your health? It's not just about digestion. The gut affects everything from your energy levels and mood to weight management and even longevity. Most gut supplements contain probiotics or maybe probiotics and prebiotics, but Bioma contains all 3 essential ingredients that your gut needs: prebiotics, probiotics, and postbiotics. And now you can visit gobioma.com/ATTWG today for an extra 15% off your order. That's GOBIOMA.com/ATTWG and get an extra 15% off. Each ingredient in Bioma is science-backed and third-party tested. You just need 2 capsules before breakfast to take the guesswork out of feeling your best. Go visit gobioma.com/ATTWG today for an extra 15% off your order. That's GOBIOMA.com/ATTWG to get an extra 15% off. The next witness was Ricardo Leal from T-Mobile. And he was basically there to testify about how they turned over the phone records in 2010.
Okay.
The defense basically spent this trying to say that we don't know if the records on the USB today are the same records that were given to the police in 2010. He's basically arguing chain of custody.
Yeah.
The judge asked why the records weren't certified, to which Sweet answered, Wing didn't get them certified.
Shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the defense was trying to not allow the phone records to be admitted into evidence, but the judge ultimately decided that they could be. And again, this wasn't very interesting testimony in terms of the jury, but it was obviously necessary because the prosecution needed those phone records to be in evidence.
Right.
So then they called Mike Colgan, and Matthew Sweet is the one who questioned him. He is the one who hired Shane to replace the acoustic ceiling tile in the weeks leading up to his disappearance. He said that he paid Shane $3,300 for the job, and he wrote him 2 separate checks. One was for $2,000 toward the end of the job when the majority of the work had been completed, and then the extra $1,300 at the end of the job. Now, part of this job, removing the ceiling tiles, included taking down lights and speakers. So Shane brought Tim in to help with that because, again, he had worked with his family's electrical company.
Right.
Colgan didn't know Tim Hickerson, but he does remember Shane introducing him to somebody who was helping him on the job. The first check was written on March 12th for $2,000 and cashed on the same day. Second check for $1,300 was written on the 19th and cashed the same day. Now, the 19th is 3 days prior to Shane's disappearance. And so the prosecution was trying to show that Shane likely had a good amount of cash on him at the time of his disappearance. Not necessarily on his person, but in his possession.
Right.
He wasn't keeping that money in the bank. It was in cash somewhere, probably. Brandon Sloan did the cross, and the only thing he really pointed out was that there was no date on the proposal that Shane gave him to do the job. So I think he was just trying to say, I don't know, maybe that we don't know when Shane was given the money or whatever. I'm not sure. But he basically had one question for him. The next witness was Timothy Gray from Verizon, and he basically served the exact same purpose that Leal from T-Mobile served. So T-Mobile at the time in 2010 was Sprint, and both of Shane's phones were on Sprint. Tim's phone was on Verizon. So that's why we've got 2 different cell phone companies here. This was mainly just a repeat of the testimony from Leal.
Were these records certified?
No, nothing was certified. But Sloan was still trying to get Gray, dismissed as a witness and argued that he even knew less than Leal did. And Leal didn't really know much. They were trying to get both of these taken out, but it didn't happen. And that was basically the end of day 1. I got out of day 1 and I was like, what the hell did I just see? It was an absolute train wreck. And the Donahue family had been waiting 15 years for this day. This is not what they had been waiting 15 years for. Everything was so disjointed. There was no narrative. Even though I knew a lot about the case going into it, I still didn't have a firm grasp of the story the prosecution was trying to tell.
Yeah, which is a pretty big fucking deal.
Yeah.
Sounded like they were going great guns at the beginning with the opening statement, but
they weren't living up to it. You know, the opening statement's supposed to be, again, you're laying out your case. You're telling people what to expect, and they are not delivering on day 1. And listen, this is a 15-year-old case with no forensics, no murder weapon. What the defense said is absolutely true. So you're facing an uphill battle. And everybody knew that. Everybody agreed to that. If you're facing such an uphill battle, you need to come out swinging.
Yeah. And you need to be organized.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were not. I got really depressed afterwards because regardless of the circumstances around his disappearance, regardless of the pills selling and, whatever else, I could not give less of a shit, right? Shane Donahue was a 23-year-old guy who had a family, who had friends, who was well-liked. He didn't deserve whatever happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't deserve to still be missing 15 years later. And as I was driving home from the courthouse that day, I just remember thinking, like, I don't think Shane is going to get justice from this trial. Because right now, the prosecution isn't proving their case. So either that means Tim is innocent of this, they had the wrong guy all along, and he's going to get acquitted. And then what? Right. Nobody's going to look into this case again.
No.
Nobody's going to look for the real killer. It's just going to go back in a drawer and never be looked at again. Or Tim's guilty and he doesn't get convicted, and Shane's killer walks free. Either way, that's not justice for Shane.
Right.
And that's how this was looking at the end of day 1. Now, we had a 4-day break. We had a long weekend. So we didn't get day 2 until November 17th. And I came in optimistic. I came in thinking they had 4 days to regroup. They have the ability to recall the witnesses that they've already called. They have the ability to really get their story together in a cohesive fashion for the jury. I was like, let's go. We got this. We're going to do this. We did not do this. The prosecution opened day 2 by shooting themselves in the foot. They harmed their own case. And I can't think of any way around that. Their first witness was a man named David Heath. He owned a store called Guns and Ammo Warehouse in Manassas.
Okay.
Tim Hickerson was a regular there. Now, Tim Hickerson, big gun guy. In fact, shortly after Shane's disappearance, Tim was arrested for a really insanely stupid burglary of a different gun store, and he went to federal prison for that. So guns are a big part of Tim Hickerson's life. So he's a regular at the store. Now, the store had surveillance video, and they have surveillance video from March 22nd, 2010, the day that Shane went missing. And they showed Tim Hickerson in the store making a purchase at 5:18 p.m. He was paying cash for whatever he was buying, which was possibly cleaning kit and or a gun. And I say and or a gun because the store closed in 2016. So Heath doesn't have his sales records anymore.
Okay.
But he has the firearm purchase records because, I think he's required to keep those.
Right.
He couldn't tell the court what Tim bought that day, but what he could say is that it wasn't a firearm.
Okay.
He actually did go back the next day, the 23rd, to buy a firearm. What it seems like may have happened, and this isn't 100%, but what it seems like may have happened is that when he was making his purchase on the 22nd, he put down money for that gun, but didn't pick it up until the 23rd.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there going, why are we showing this?
Right.
Because all this is showing is that Tim didn't buy a gun on the day Shane went missing.
Right.
He maybe bought a gun the day after. And more importantly, he's in Manassas. And granted, this is maybe only 15, 20 minutes away from his home, but he's in Manassas at 5:18 p.m. Shane's phones were both off by 3:56 p.m., about 10 to 15 minutes after they left Shane's parents' house.
So almost 4 o'clock.
Almost 4 o'clock. Tim is looking cool as a fucking cucumber at 5:18.
Right. An hour and 15 minutes.
Give or take.
Give or take. Later. Plus the 15 to 20 minute commute time.
Right. So you're telling me that this guy killed Shane Donahue.
Expertly hid his body.
Yeah. Or at least felt comfortable enough to leave him somewhere.
Yeah. Drove 20 minutes.
Bought random stuff, put some money down for a gun. Now, I think what they were trying to show is that
he paid cash. Where did he get the cash?
Right.
Probably from robbing Shane.
Yeah.
Or stealing the money from Shane after murdering him. Yes.
Right.
I get that, but you're right. It actually shows the opposite.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he killed Shane,
absolutely.
took the money, drove to this gun store and was totally cool.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know this guy. Maybe he's a psychopath. Like, maybe he could do that. I don't know. The jury doesn't know. But like, holy shit, it's a lot less likely to me, just as a person who's observing this from the outside, that that's what happened.
Right.
Because what I realized after watching this testimony was that I didn't really know where Tim was supposed to have been after he dropped off Shane. You know what I mean? Like, he's always said, I dropped off Shane at around 4:00 and I didn't see him after. I have no idea what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been his story. But what I don't know is what he said he was doing after that, after 4 p.m. on the 22nd.
Right.
So we learned one thing he was definitely doing was going to this gun store an hour later.
Yeah, I mean, this video almost proves Tim's timeline. I mean, it doesn't prove that he dropped him off.
No, and it doesn't prove that he didn't harm him. It doesn't prove that he's innocent.
Right.
But it, in my opinion, did not help the prosecution's case at all, and I think it actively harmed it. Eisenstein did the cross, and there was nothing. Literally, I have one line written down that says nothing unusual about transaction. Because what do they need to cross? This dude basically proved their case.
Wow.
So then they brought back Detective Wing. And I thought, okay.
Here's where they rebound, right?
Right? Like, we had a little bit of a setback, but maybe Wing's going to give more context to this whole guns and ammo stop.
Yeah.
That's going to make sense. And then maybe they're going to go back and ask him about that interview with Tim.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, let's go. Let's get this guy back on the stand. But Wing was back on the stand not because he was recalled by the prosecution, but because the defense needed to finish their cross-examination of him. So when that whole Dwayne Spence recording interview debacle happened, they stopped. It was the end of the day. They let Wing go. But the defense wasn't actually finished with their cross-examination.
Oh, okay.
So they brought Wing back, and now they asked him about the guns and ammo trip because we had just seen the video. Wing said it was common for Tim to buy and sell guns there. Eisenstein, who was doing the cross, made the point that that purchase had nothing to do with this case because he didn't get a gun that day.
Yeah.
He also said that he bought the gun on the next day, like we said, and then returned it on May 7th because you can sell guns on consignment there. He also showed Detective Wing a Google Earth image of Shane's house and Tim's family's house, which is where Tim was living at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And basically to get the point across to the jury that they were less than a mile apart.
Right. So the ping, that it doesn't prove that he was actually at Tim's house.
That's their argument.
When the phones went.
Right. Then he goes back to Dwayne Spence, and Wing still says he does not remember speaking to Dwayne Spence in May of 2010. And Eisenstein said, okay, well, you met with him May 17, 2010. Wing's like, don't remember. He also said that he met with the Donahues several times, both in person and over the phone, and that Shane Donahue had a roommate. And we bring this up in our original episode from 2020. His name, it was hard to catch. I want to say it was something like Lance Starlett. But this guy, this roommate, was an FBI informant. And Shane had kicked him out prior to his disappearance. So they're basically bringing this up saying like, hey.
There's another alternative suspect.
Exactly. Like, why weren't you looking into this guy?
Right.
Wing also said that Emily and Shane had a romantic relationship and that Shane had been not only abusing oxys, but he had been abusing Roxys, which is a similar pill, and Xanax. He also said that Shane was the main supplier of oxy in the Nokesville area. So maybe a little bit more than a small-time pill dealer. Now, and this is important that the defense got this brought up. Shane and Tim worked together on that job.
Right.
Shane paid Tim $1,000 in cash for that job.
There's the cash that he used at the gun store.
That's a completely reasonable explanation. We don't know that for a fact, but that's a reasonable explanation. And again, it's something that I've always had a question about since the beginning, which is if Shane's so mad at Tim for this burglary and he's pissed that he owes him this $500. Why is he bringing him onto this job?
And then paying him $1,000.
And now he might have paid him before the burglary because the checks that Shane was given were dated the 12th and the 19th. The burglary was on the 20th. So I don't know when Shane gave Tim the $1,000, what day that was, if it was before or after the burglary. But either way, they were still hanging out after the burglary.
Right.
And Tim was helping Shane fix an ATV. So that's the part that's always been confusing to me in terms of motive.
Yeah.
And the defense did a good job by, getting that brought up, that $1,000. He then asked Wing if Emily Kinnaman had been threatened, which is another thing I never heard. Wing said he didn't recall. So part of the problem with the Dwayne Spence recording that was played in court, the excerpt, is that the jury heard the excerpt, but because Wing said he didn't remember it, it couldn't really be brought in as evidence. So it was the whole thing. So in order to avoid that, they had Wing listen to things on headphones.
To try and jog his memory.
But without having the jury listen to it. So he listened to recording, and apparently the Donahues threatened Emily.
Really?
Yeah. Now, he also talked about the Donahue family hired a private investigator very quickly after Shane went missing, and Wing met with that PI several times. The PI shared evidence with him. One of the things that the PI shared with him was the drug ledger.
Oh, so he did have it.
Yeah, I think the PI had gotten it from the Donahues.
So maybe there was some truth to the theory that the Donahues went into Shane's house and moved things around.
Yeah, and kind of took things that might have made him look bad. So Wing says that he turned the ledger into the property department. Apparently, there were reports that people received calls from Shane after March 22nd.
Oh.
Now, of course, there are no calls from Shane on the two phones that they had records for.
Right. But if he's using a burner phone,
then maybe these people were receiving calls from Shane, and maybe Shane wasn't killed on the 22nd, which again is just punching more holes in the prosecution's theory.
But do we have anybody that can corroborate that?
No, we didn't have any witnesses at all. Again, they're just kind of throwing things out there at this point, right? Reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
On March 29th, 2010, Teresa McConnell from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office said that there were two scenarios that were likely in Shane's disappearance. One, he was dead from an overdose, or he was dead because of a drug deal gone wrong. Shane mixed drugs. They talked about how he mixed the oxys, the roxys, the Xanax, and said that is very dangerous and could lead to an overdose. And he also interacted with dangerous people. And the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office in 2010 wasn't able to rule out either one of these scenarios. When Wing transitioned off the case in 2011 and handed it over to the cold case unit, his conclusions were that it was possibly a body dump after an OD, that Shane and Tim had a confrontation after the burglary, or that Shane started a new life with a new phone, though
yes,
he did call it unlikely.
Yeah.
The defense's point was that, after your extensive investigation 2010, you still couldn't prove that it was Tim.
Right.
And nothing has changed since then. Now, Bilton did the redirect, so I had high hopes for the redirect, right? Thought we were going to talk about that interview. She said that he interviewed Tim Hickerson at least 4 times and that he had heard rumors about the burglary prior to the interview. And the first interview was on March 26th. But the interview we heard was from June of 2010. So it was like, the third, the fourth, whichever interview. In the first interview, Tim denied the burglary and said people were accusing him of a drug rip, but he didn't do it. And the Nokesville area at the time was Rumor Mill Central. But they didn't play that interview where he denied it. And they didn't say, here's an interview where he denies the burglary. Here's an interview a couple months later where he admits to it.
Yeah, they didn't.
This guy can't be trusted.
Right, they didn't punch home the point.
No, not at all. And then the drug ledger, which he said that he handed over to the property department, appears to be missing. So that has never been put into evidence. And then she excused him.
A lot of missed opportunities there.
Yeah.
For the prosecution.
Absolutely. Now, the first, I thought, relatively positive witness the prosecution had, which the defense says was a terrible witness for the prosecution, was Brian Donahue, Shane's father. To me, I thought it was good for the prosecution because it humanized Shane.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, they hadn't done a great job of doing that. And it showed a father who had been in pain for 15 years. Now, the defense has said that Brian came off as angry, which he absolutely did.
Sure,
and
but
that,
I mean, it's reasonable.
Yeah,
but that
didn't look good for the prosecution, which I personally disagree with, but whatever.
Yeah.
He was angry. Bilton did this questioning again. She showed Brian a picture of Shane for identification. It was an 8x10 photo of Shane. And Brian got this like little smile when he saw it. And it's even hard to talk about now. And I even wrote in my notes, the little smile almost killed me because, we had gotten bogged down in like the cell phone records and, all of this stuff. And that moment showed a father who loved his son, who hasn't seen his son in 15 years, and who was just happy to see a photo of him. He talked about how Shane was born on August 22nd, 1986 at Fairfax Hospital, and how Shane in 2010 was renting a house about 8 miles from their home. He said that he didn't see him that often because, he worked a lot and whatever, but that Shane kept in close contact with his mother, Donna, especially after her cancer diagnosis, because she was dealing with, I think, 2 different kinds of cancer in 2010. On March 22nd, 2010, Brian returned home around 3:30 because he had to come home around then every day to make sure that Donna ate before she took her medication at 4. He saw the Hickerson electric truck at his house, and there was a trailer attached to it that was full of drop ceiling tiles. So he was wondering what they were doing here, and he came across like he was not happy that Tim Hickerson or any of the Hickersons were on his property. Like, it's hard to say, if he's saying that now because obviously he's believed that Tim caused Shane's death for the past 15 years, or if he had a problem with Tim or the Hickersons prior to that.
Right.
So when he got home, Shane was talking to his mother, and Shane told Brian that he had hired Tim for the job and that's why he was there and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So Brian left to go make food for Donna, and that was the last time he saw his son. Apparently, they had left that trailer full of drop ceiling tiles on the property, but that the next day on the 23rd, it was gone. So somebody apparently came and picked it up. Then on the 24th, a few of Shane's friends came over and said that they couldn't reach Shane, and they were concerned. And then that's again when Donna contacted the police, and apparently before she got sick, she used to work for the sheriff's office. They found out that Shane's phones were off within about 10 minutes of he and Tim leaving the house. And so they searched everywhere within a 10 to 15-minute radius of their house. He eventually called Tim and asked Tim to come to the house so that they could talk about it because, again, Tim was the last person who was with Shane. Tim pushed them off, but he did end up coming a few days later, and Brian said that when he was there, he seemed really nervous and he didn't make eye contact.
Well, I mean, okay, but he was also, a drug user.
Yeah. He said that he told Tim that some of Shane's friends were going to come and look for Shane on 4-wheelers, with the implication being, hey, you're Shane's friend. Do you want to, come search? Like, can you help? Do you want to help? But instead, Tim allegedly replied, my grandfather doesn't want anyone on his property. To which Brian said, nobody said anything about your grandfather's property.
Okay.
And so he thought that was suspicious. Tim did not seem interested in helping them look for Shane. And he immediately was like, don't go on my grandfather's property.
Right. Yeah.
Which is the property that was a mile away from Shane's house. The one thing that I think did hurt the prosecution in Brian Donahue's testimony was when Eisenstein began the cross-examination, he asked Brian, was Shane struggling with addiction? And again, this is something that pretty much has been stipulated to on both sides. It's not a secret, you know what I mean? But Brian was very antagonistic toward the defense. And he just said, he seemed normal to me. And he said he didn't live in his father's basement, meaning like
druggies live in their parents' houses.
Yeah. Basically, I didn't know everything he did. You know, he was a grown man, but that he didn't live in his father's basement. He looked directly at Tim when he said that because Tim at the time was 28 and was living in his parents' house.
Yeah, this is the angry part.
Part. Eisenstein asked Brian about his daughter, and Brian said, quote, I had a daughter until they had her arrested and she killed herself, end quote.
What?
Cheyenne is Shane's sister. She died not too long after his disappearance.
Oh, okay.
And this has been a point of contention because based on the obituary, I thought that it was a suicide. But and I said that in our original episode, but then I got a ton of hate mail for like years saying, how dare you say that she killed herself? And so I'm pretty sure that in our update episode on the arrest, I said, hey, that was just my impression. Apparently, she didn't kill herself. I don't know. Regardless.
Well,
she died, and one way or another, it seems like it was related to her brother going missing because she was in college. She was doing great. And then it seems like she kind of went into a downward spiral after Shane's disappearance. This was brought up because Eisenstein asked if Cheyenne had given Shane one pill at a time as a way to help him manage his addiction. And Brian said VCU is a long way from Aiden Road, meaning Cheyenne was at VCU at the time down in Richmond, which is several hours away. And he's like, how could she be doing that? She was in college.
Right.
Eisenstein said, but you never spoke to Shane on March 22nd. And he said, I did speak to Shane because that's what he had just testified to.
Yeah.
He said, you didn't tell investigators that you didn't speak to Shane on March 22nd? And he said, no, because that isn't the truth. But he showed a photo of the interior of Shane's house with a black box on the coffee table. Brian said he didn't recognize it. And I think this is that safe that keeps on coming up. And I have to read between the lines because like so much of this was never made clear. But I think the idea is that Shane had this safe that the Donahues took.
Right.
And we don't know what was in the safe. And then he said, you didn't tell Officer Jensen that Shane owned 2 guns. And he said, I don't know what Shane owned. And they said, well, you turned over 2 guns later in 2024 that you said belonged to Shane. And he's like, well, maybe I did. Like maybe we had these guns because Shane's house kept on getting broken into. And again, looking directly at Tim. He asked if Shane ever went to their house to get away from Emily Kinnaman. Brian said he didn't remember. He said, did anyone threaten anybody or Emily Kinnaman? And Brian said, no. She was gone. All of his friends were mysteriously gone, meaning that after Shane's disappearance, they really didn't stick around and help out as much as he thought they should have. He asked if you had seen a drug ledger, and he said, no, I also didn't balance his checkbook or fold his laundry. And he said his cell phones were also gone. They were destroyed while looking at him. The last question was, did you ever see a death certificate for your son? And Brian said, no. Can you help me with that after this? And then he was excused. Now, the reason why he asked that question comes up later, but it was basically saying, we can't even prove a death, much less a murder.
Gotcha. Okay.
The next witness was Daniel Gould, whose nickname was Boston. And Matthew Sweet questioned him. He was another drug user. He met Shane through the Kushners, and they saw each other at parties, and then he started getting pills from Shane. He would also get a discount on pills if he drove Shane around.
Okay.
He was the one that was with Shane the morning of his disappearance and took him to Walmart and all that stuff. Yeah. He also said that he would take Shane to the doctor about once a month on their doctor days so that he could get his prescribed pills. He called Shane a friend and said that he was a good person who made him feel welcome because, again, he's not from the area like most everybody else is there. And he did drugs with Shane at his home. He also said that he saw Shane with a gun the last time he was with him on the 22nd. And Shane told him about the break-in and said that he was pissed and showed him the gun. It was a silver and black revolver, and he never saw Shane shoot it, and that Shane didn't carry a gun with him in general. Like, he never seen Shane with a gun any other time. He knew Emily Kinnaman through the same people, and he had seen her at Shane's house, and he had also seen her snort pills at Shane's house as well. He also knew Tim through Shane and was asked if he had seen Tim do drugs, and he said no. Asked if he had seen him high, and he said yes. He said that Tim would go to Shane to get pills, and, you can just tell when somebody's high, basically. And he asked if he ever saw Shane sell pills in his home in 2010, and he said yes. And he says that he knows that Tim bought pills from Shane, but he never actually saw the transaction himself. He was asked where Shane kept his pills, and he said it depended, sometimes on the table. He said that on the 22nd, he hadn't seen Shane for about a week, but they hung out. He picked him up around noon. They did all those stops. And he said that Shane had money on him. And then he, again, told the story about how after the errands, they went back to Shane's house, but then Tim came over. Daniel felt that the vibe was weird, and so he just left.
Right.
He said that after that day, he never saw or heard from Shane again, and he has no idea where he is today. Brandon Slow did the cross, and he said that Gould had discussed the case with law enforcement multiple times over the years. And he was trying to figure out how much money Daniel had said that Shane had. He said in 2010, he told law enforcement that Shane had a chunk of money because he was possibly buying a car. So when they went to Target, they didn't actually go to Target. They went to the parking lot where Shane was looking at a car to potentially buy.
Okay.
But in 2024, he said that Shane didn't have money on him to buy a car. When he spoke with a private investigator in 2010, he told him that Shane wasn't mad about the burglary. And basically, in 2010, Shane was mad about a different ripoff. The week before his disappearance, he had gone to buy pills, like what sounds like a relatively large amount of pills from somebody. And those pills are supposed to be Oxy or something along those lines. It turns out they were heart medication.
Oh.
The defense is trying to get the point across that Shane was pissed about that ripoff, not the 3 pills that Tim might have stolen.
Yeah.
And they said that in 2010, Daniel Gould told the PI that Shane was going to bring his gun and go out and meet those guys, not Tim. So at this point, the defense is basically trying to show that Daniel's kind of changing his story to show that Shane was mad at Tim because Daniel was pissed at Tim. Because in 2024, he told Detective Kupka that it was fucked up that Tim put his name in this investigation.
Okay.
So he's saying he only got involved in this because of Tim. And, he's been questioned multiple times over the past 15 years.
Yeah.
Also, over the years, Daniel Gould has had many different run-ins with the law. And in 2011, he asked Detective Masterson, who I believe was one of the cold case detectives, for help on a charge that he was facing.
Okay.
The jury actually got dismissed for this next part because what we found out is that Gould has a current pending case in that court.
Oh.
And the Commonwealth objected to a question about whether or not he's expecting help on that charge today in 2025. That objection was overruled. So yeah, I don't think that was particularly helpful for the prosecution.
Not at all.
Because he doesn't seem incredibly credible.
Right.
He's helpful in terms of like timeline building.
Yeah, which is probably why they brought him on.
Yeah.
But again, if, the defense brings up multiple inconsistencies over the years, like,
yeah,
it just destroys the timeline, or at least,
well, I mean,
the credibility of the timeline.
Yeah, Like, the timeline's a timeline. Like, we have receipts. We know they were at Walmart at the time he says they were at Walmart. Like, so, like, that part of it is pretty much undisputed. But yeah, like, everything else he has to say about, whether or not Shane was mad at Tim and things like that. Like, you can't really trust what he's saying.
Right.
So the next witness was the famous Emily Kinnaman. Bilton is the one who handled this questioning. And I thought she also did a really good job of humanizing Shane. She also did a really good job of standing her ground during cross-examination, which obviously we'll get to. But she talked about how she grew up with Shane. They were good friends. They talked every day, and they spent a lot of time together. Yeah, they were doing drugs together. She said she was in active addiction in 2010, as was he. So that was absolutely part of their relationship. But it wasn't all of their relationship, Like, they also like to sit on the couch and watch Jersey Shore together. She also would give him rides places, to the doctor, to run errands, to do whatever. He also would give her pills. He would sell her pills. And in 2010, she had a physical dependence on pills and used 4 to 5 days a week. She was also asked if she had seen Shane dope sick, and she said yes. Now, we never really got the reasoning as to why the prosecution kept on asking this question to witnesses. My speculation is that they're saying that on the 22nd, Shane was dope sick, and so maybe his defenses were down. But I honestly don't know. We never got the reason behind that repeated question.
I can't think of a reason why they would continuously bring that up.
They also asked her about her criminal record. She had 2 possession felonies and a prescription fraud felony in 2010. Also larceny and check fraud. And she said all of it kind of happened around the same time. But she's currently clean and sober. And she seemed like it. Like, she seemed very together, She said she last saw Shane the night of the 21st, so the night before he disappeared. They hung out and watched TV in the early evening. They discussed her taking him to Walmart the next day, but he texted her, I guess, the next morning and said that he had a ride, which we know is from Daniel Gould. So she never actually saw him on the 22nd. On the 20th, she saw him, and that's the day of the burglary. She said that he dropped her off at work and took her car. He then picked her up after work, and they went to his house. When they were back at his house, they were watching TV in the living room, and Shane noticed a bumper sticker that had fallen on the floor. That bumper sticker had been on his mantle. So he picked it up, went to the mantle, and noticed some things had been moved around, and that he had 3 pills in a bowl or a jar or whatever, and they were gone. She said that Shane, quote, got upset naturally, end quote. And then the night kind of turned into a bunch of discussion about that. Like, who did this, whatever. She said that he did not have any pills with him the next day on Sunday, the 21st, when they had hung out, and that they made plans to go get more on the 23rd. And that Tuesday was the day. Like, that was their big day. They were going to go to the Dale City area to meet a lady who owed him a handful of oxy. But on the 23rd, she hadn't heard from him about this, which was very weird because she made the point. She's like, listen, when you're in active addiction and you have plans to get pills, you're going to get those pills.
Yeah.
So she's like, it was really weird that I didn't hear from him because we had these plans. So she went to his house. And at some point, she thought like, okay, this is an emergency because I can't find him. So she went to his house. She peeked in the windows. She tried to get in, but all the doors were locked. She contacted Cheyenne, his sister, and wanted her to basically break into the house because I think at that point she was afraid that he had like OD'd or something and he was dead on the floor.
Yeah.
And she said, quote, I thought he was hurt or dead inside, end quote. But Cheyenne said, he's fine. He's fine. She didn't know. She was like at VCU, but She just assumed that Shane was fine. Then the question, did you try to call Shane after March 23rd? And she said, quote, I knew he was gone. I knew there was no point, end quote. And they said, what do you mean by that? And she said, I knew he was dead. To clarify, she said, nothing is going to keep you from a handful of oxys that someone owes you. He's not going to not contact his sister or his mother. Quote, in my mind, it was obvious, end quote. They asked if she knew Tim. She said yes, she had met him at Shane's house. And, she saw him often enough to know that he and Shane were friends. And she did see drug transactions between Shane and Tim at Shane's house. Then Eisenstein crossed her. He said that Sweet told her, and I guess this was in that 11-6 interview, that the defense may attempt to spin or manipulate prior statements. And he confirmed that she met with the prosecution 3 times in preparation, and that she declined to meet with the defense. She said that she had spoken about this case too many times to count. She said that Detective Seekley called her in May 2024. Now, Detective Seekley is the one who reinvestigated this case and ended up, leading to Tim's arrest. She initially didn't want to talk to him. She said that she'd think about it, but she said she didn't want to go through the trauma if it wasn't going to lead anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Because she said,
why continuously bring this up? There's no new evidence.
Yeah. She's like, you haven't arrested anyone in 15 years. Like, why are we still doing this? In September, they went to her work and she said she wanted a lawyer if she was going to talk to him. So she got a lawyer. Detective Seekley gave the lawyer a list of questions. So she answered the list. The lawyer submitted it. Then I think she was getting into maybe her alibi and Tony Matong. Tony Matong is who she was with at the Bungalow Ale House.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that she picked him up from rehab late on March 22nd in Farmville, which is kind of far away. So basically neither one of them was around the evening of the 22nd or the night of the 22nd. But after that, she says she drove by Shane's house and saw that his lights were on at 2 a.m. She called him, he didn't answer, and she drove back again, the lights were still on. She also said that Shane had gotten into a physical altercation at the party that he was at on the 20th, which is where he was when the burglary occurred.
Okay.
But we didn't get into who that physical altercation was with. But I think, again, the defense is trying to show that Shane had issues with a lot of different people.
Right. There's another possible suspect there.
Exactly. When Detective Wing came to her house on March 25th, she told him that Shane used combinations of drugs to get a better high. And again, this is just going to that overdose theory.
Right.
She also said that she herself owed Shane about $100 for pills at the time of his disappearance, and that it wasn't uncommon for Shane to front pills to friends. Then they asked her about the threat from the Donahue family. And she was like, I don't remember that. The question was, so you don't remember telling Wing that someone in the Donahue family said that if Shane came up dead, you'd be dead too? And that's in a recorded conversation. So she listened to that with headphones and she's like, nah, I don't remember saying that.
Okay, but she did say it.
They said that she had a long phone conversation with Tim Hickerson in the days after March 22nd. She said that she doesn't remember the content of that call. She also told Wing that Shane was secretive about who he got drugs from. She said she didn't remember that conversation, but says that it was normal in that culture not to spread all of your business around. Then they started talking about Josh Cook and the Kaisers and the Kennedys. Now, these are names that have been floating around this case since the beginning as basically alternate suspects.
Mm-hmm.
Wing asked her about Josh Cook. She said she didn't remember that, but the recording said, Josh Cook is the person, it was my fault. She says she knew where Wing was going and it wasn't relevant. But again, she's listening to these recordings on headphones. So it was kind of hard to follow this point.
Yeah. Well,
and again, if I'm having
the jury,
that's what I'm saying. If I'm having trouble following it, then the jury was having trouble following it. What we do find out as this questioning goes on is that Josh Cook was apparently the one behind that heart pill ripoff.
There you go.
Emily's the one who set up the deal.
Oh.
Shane gave Josh several $100s for Oxy, but he got ripped off. But she said that Shane did not have plans to get even. He made no aggressive remarks and he was just going to eat the loss. He was upset, but not aggressive. He asked her, Shane wasn't going to do anything because he was on probation, right? And she says she doesn't remember, but it's on the recording. He said that, but I probably didn't believe him. That wasn't the type of person he was. So at the time of Shane's disappearance, he was on probation, but he was almost off of probation. So I think the point that they were trying to get across is that Shane maybe wasn't going to get even with Josh Cook then.
Right.
But as soon as he was off probation, then he was going to. And she was like, maybe he said that, but like Shane was just not a violent person. And
I mean, getting even doesn't necessarily mean violence. I mean, it could be, I'm going to do the same thing back to you.
Or something. But like she was just getting the point across. She's like, I don't know. Like this whole idea of like Shane getting angry and confronting someone is just not his personality.
But he was carrying a gun.
Yeah. Emily was also the one who introduced Shane to Chris Kaiser and the Kennedys. She had told the prosecution that the Cooks and the Kaisers were dangerous people. She also talked about basically how he was taking a lot of Xanax at the time. Some of his pills got wet. He like ate the wet pills instead of like letting them go to waste, like that kind of stuff.
Yikes.
And apparently in 2014, she told the PI that Shane was angry about Kaiser and the Cooks, and he was going to confront them. She said she didn't recall. The defense really tried to discredit her because of her addiction. They also tried to bring home what they were arguing in the arraignment, that the prosecution had coached her. Because in the interview, she said something like, I was doing drugs every day. And then she said, oh, wait, I don't want to say that. And so they were trying to say like that she's basically lying. But she's like, no, what I meant by that is that I was in active addiction. My body wanted to do drugs every single day. However, I didn't have that much money, so I couldn't do drugs every single day. So I didn't want it to seem as though I was under the influence every single day because I wasn't. I could only afford to do drugs 4 to 5 days a week, whatever it was. And so she said she just stopped herself from saying that, not because she was lying, but because there's a difference between wanting to do drugs every day and actually doing drugs every day.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that kind of makes sense.
I'll tell you, in the moment sitting there, it made perfect sense to me. The way she explained it, I was like, okay, yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
The defense was trying to do kind of a gotcha moment. To me, it didn't really work. And in general, she came off pretty credible. But the defense did do a good job in the cross of showing that there were a lot of other people in Shane's orbit
who could have done this.
Exactly. Yeah. As the air turns crisp and the holidays draw near, comfort becomes the best gift of all. Quince delivers layers that last, sweaters, outerwear, and everyday essentials that feel luxurious, look timeless, and make holiday dressing and gifting effortless. Quince has it all. $50 Mongolian cashmere sweaters made for everyday wear, denim that never goes out of style, silk tops and skirts that add polish, and down outerwear built to take on the season. It's perfect for gifting or upgrading your own wardrobe. And we recently upgraded our wardrobes with Quince.
We did. I ordered a cashmere quarter zip sweater, and it is so soft. I love it.
Yeah, and you got a lot of compliments.
I did.
I also ordered cashmere. I got this short-sleeved sweater that was super cute, and I paired it with wide-leg jeans that I also got from Quince. So I got a whole outfit.
You did, and you looked so good in it.
Thank you. Step into the holiday season with layers made to feel good, look polished, and last. From Quince. Perfect for gifting or keeping for yourself. Go to quince.com/ATTWG for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/ATTWG to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ATTWG. If you've been listening to this show for a while, then you know that I'm a podcaster and a realtor. And on some days, like today, I have to do both. I spent all day in a courthouse watching a trial that we're covering, and then I had to drive an hour and a half away to put a lockbox on a new listing. It was a long day, to say the least, and normally I would have been exhausted at about 3 when I still had several hours to go. But I've recently been adding everyday dose into my morning routine, specifically into my morning coffee. And let me tell you, I was driving home late tonight and I felt great. Everyday Dose is coffee plus benefits. They combine high-quality coffee with powerful ingredients like lion's mane and chaga, collagen protein, and nootropics to fuel your brain, boost focus, and give you clean, sustained energy all day long. It tastes just like coffee without the downside. No crash, no jitters, just clean, sustained energy. Right now for Black Friday, get 61% off your first Coffee Plus starter kit, a free A2 probiotic creamer, and over $100 in free gifts. Plus, enter for a chance to win $100 cash or get your entire order refunded. Visit everydaydose.com/ATTWG or use code ATTWG at checkout. Have you ever noticed how many unnecessary chemicals are in your cleaning products? When I started looking into what I was actually using around my home, I realized that my laundry detergent was one of the worst offenders. So many popular brands are packed with harsh chemicals that can irritate your skin, mess up your hormones, and cause allergic reactions. But I don't want all of that, so I switched to EarthBreeze. Their detergent sheets are free from harsh chemicals like optical brighteners, dyes, parabens, phosphates, and preservatives. Plus, they don't come in those heavy plastic jugs. It's no mess and no mystery ingredients. Just a lightweight, pre-measured sheet that dissolves in the wash and gets the job done. And yes, your clothes still come out clean, fresh, and soft. So if you're looking for a powerful clean without harsh chemicals, try EarthBreeze. It's easy to switch, and if you're not completely satisfied, they have an amazing money-back guarantee. Right now, you can try EarthBreeze for up to 40% off plus 4 free gifts at earthbreeze.com/ATTWG. That's earthbreeze.com/ATTWG for 40% off plus 4 free gifts. Then we got into Luis de Jesus, who is an FBI agent who was called to present the cell phone data. And this is like the crux of the prosecution's case. So this is like their star witness here. It did not go well. He said that on Shane's phone, which ended in 9052, at 3:56 p.m. on March 22nd, 2010, an incoming call went to voicemail. And there are no outgoing calls after that time. Then there was another phone, 0603, which was Tim's phone. On March 24th, at 9:16 a.m., this phone called the 9052 number. It logged communication, but there was no tower communication. Basically meaning that they could show that the call happened, but it didn't connect with the tower because the phone was off.
So you're saying that there's evidence that Tim called Shane's phone
2 days after
he went missing?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of pokes a hole in the prosecution's case.
Well, I can see where the prosecution was going with this because they went there in the preliminary. They just never got there in this. So we'll get to that in a second. Then they showed the map. It had 2 locations, L1, which is Shane's house, and L3, which is Hickerson Lane, which is Tim's house. Shane's phone was in Sector 3 at 3:55 p.m. And they were saying that based on the map, Sector 3 is Tim's house. And it showed that at 3:54, 3:55, 3:56, both of those phones were in Sector 3. And that they could not be at L1, which was Shane's house. So this is the big cell phone evidence. They're saying that at this time, when Tim Hickerson said he dropped off Shane Donahue, Shane's phones were at Tim Hickerson's house, not at Shane Donahue's house.
Okay. But 356, right? Was the last one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, he lives less than a mile from him.
Mm-hmm.
So what if he got dropped off at 357 or 358?
Right. But he never should have been in the sector that Tim's house was, according to the story Tim gave. His phones, regardless of when Shane was dropped off, he should have never been in that sector. Those phones never should have shown up there, but they did. The cross, which was Sloan, made basically the same argument that you did. And it's a very convoluted way of doing it, and we don't need to get into it. But there's a lot of argument, a lot of back and forth. And Sloan was just trying to say they were so close together that if something was remotely off, the phone could have shown up in one sector when it was actually in another. Kept on saying, no, that's not how this works. He was in this sector, not in that sector. But Sloan just hammered it, over and over again and said, this is the kind of close where roughly makes a big difference, right? The borders were close. I mean, L3, which is Hickerson's house, was 0.8 miles from the center of the cell tower, and Shane's house was 0.65 miles from the center of the cell tower.
Right.
So it's tough. In direct examination, he also said there was more incoming activity on Shane's phones after 3:56 p.m., but no outgoing or tower activity after that. But what we never got into, and I do think this might have been excluded, which is why they couldn't get into it. But what we never got into were the actual call records, meaning who had Shane been calling in the days leading up to his disappearance, who had been calling him, and who was calling him after his disappearance. We talked about that phone call on the 24th, but the point that they made in the preliminary hearing that they weren't able to make or didn't make in the trial was that Shane and Tim usually had communication 15 to 20 times a day. And there was no communication between the two of them the evening of the 22nd, none on the 23rd, just one call on the 24th.
Yeah, but why would he call on the 24th? If he had murdered Shane, why would he call his phone 2 days later?
Well, I think the idea is that, it'll look suspicious if I don't call to see where he is. So let me just make this call, even though I know where he is.
Maybe.
So on redirect, Sweet came up and said, were either Shane Donahue's phones at L1 at the time of their last connection? De Jesus said no. So he was very clear. Like, these phones were not at Shane's house. What I wrote down in my own notes is that the way to show that, because they had Shane's phone records starting on like March 15th, I think. So like the week prior to his disappearance. And we know from previous testimony that Emily was with Shane at his house the night of the 21st, right?
Right.
So to me, and again, this goes into rules of evidence, maybe there's a legal reason why you couldn't do this. But to me, during that testimony, when she's saying, I was with Shane at his house March 21st, pull up the map.
Mm-hmm.
Pull up the map that shows where Shane's phones were the evening of the 21st. Show what sector it's in. Show how close it is to L1.
Right.
Show how far it is from L3.
Right. There's no frame of reference, essentially, as to what the margin of error could be.
Yeah.
Without showing that.
Without showing it.
Right.
If the map clearly shows a difference between the 21st and the 22nd, then there you go.
Yeah. But they didn't do that.
They didn't do it. So either that was just a missed opportunity, or the defense is right and it doesn't show a difference.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is.
I mean, it's a missed opportunity on both sides.
Well, no, it's not, because the defense, I mean, yeah, if the defense was right about it and that map would have shown basically the same thing on the 21st that it did on the 22nd, they could have gotten to that when they presented their case.
Yeah, right.
But we're still in the prosecution's case. So it
definitely
wasn't a missed opportunity on the defense's side at that point. So then we got to Sergeant Seekley, who was the person who took this case over in 2024. He's the one who reinvestigated this case. And according to the opening statements from the prosecution, said he went down every road and they all led to Tim Hickerson. Now, he did talk about the patterns of the call history and the frequency of contact between Shane and Tim. And they had about a month of data that he looked at starting on March 15th and going about to the end of April. But he doesn't talk about specific calls. But he does say they were frequently in contact both ways and that Tim made that one call on the 24th. He also called Shane's other number around the same time. And on the 26th, made another call to that second number of Shane's. He also said that there was an abandoned farmhouse on Hickerson Farm. The grandfather had been living on that part of the land And the Hickersons lived in the house next door. So I guess this is the land that Tim was referring to when he said my grandfather doesn't want anybody on his land.
Right.
And that's it. That's all I've got from the direct examination of the guy who took this case over in 2024.
So they didn't ask him any questions that would prove their case?
No.
Nothing at all?
No.
Okay.
Then Sloan got up and did the cross, and he confirmed that Seekley was assigned the case in April 2024 along with Detective Kupka. And at that time, the two most likely suspects were Tim Hickerson and Craig Matong. Then they talked more about the historical cell data analysis and the report from a woman named Gretchen Gephardt. Gretchen Gephardt testified in the preliminary hearing. She is the one who analyzed the cell phone data for Prince William Police back in 2010, 2011. And instead of having her testify at trial, they brought in De Jesus, the FBI agent. But he asked about Gephardt, asked how much he had reviewed the call logs and things like that. And he's like, I've continuously reviewed it.
Sure.
Sloan asked, hey, so these phones that Shane was using, they were prepaid, right? And he said, yeah. He's like, well, is it possible that he just ran out of minutes? And that's why there weren't any more calls and they stopped being used? And he was like, yeah, maybe. But, because, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the odds that they kind of ran out at the same time? But it's not impossible.
Right.
He also said that Seekley interviewed Craig Matong twice and brought him 2 letters offering him immunity from prosecution if he would testify.
Mm-hmm.
And Matong declined. Then he asked how many interviews he conducted between April and September of 2024. He says that he did about 20 interviews of 17 people and that Detective Kupka did an additional 5 to 6.
So way more than the initial investigator.
Well, I will say the original case file says that there were 68 interviews and 20,000 miles in the original investigation. So I guess Wing only did 9 to 10 interviews and maybe other detectives did the other 58, which seems
unlikely.
weird.
Yeah.
But in any case, Sloan then went and asked about what Seekley didn't do during his investigation. Did you interview Daniel Gould? No. Did you interview the other Matongs, Brian and Tony? No. Did you speak to Emily Kinnaman's brother? No. Somebody named Adam Kay. Susie Carroll, which is who he was supposed to get the pills from on the 23rd? No. Somebody named Kushner. They only spoke with Mike Colgan, the one who hired Shane, after they arrested Tim. Ryan Knight, who was a known drug dealer who lied about an alibi, apparently, in the original investigation. Did you talk to him? No. Did you talk to the ex-roommate, the FBI informant? No, couldn't find him. Did you talk to Dwayne Spence? No, he was dead. Did you talk to Ashley Miller, who lived across the street and posited a timeline of seeing cars? No. Stuart Crane, the person whose party Shane was at on the 20th? No. James Fletcher, who was friends with Craig Matong? No. Justin Martin, who is Cheyenne's boyfriend, who may have entered Shane's house before the police? No, they didn't speak to him because they didn't think he had relevant information. Did you speak to Dusty Cornwell, who sold Shane a gun? That was one of the guns that was turned over by the Donahues in 2024, and apparently there had been bad blood between him and Shane. He apparently had no-showed to an interview at some point during the original investigation, as did Ryan Miller. They asked, did you speak to Dusty Cornwell? No, he died in 2019. John and Paul Kennedy. Remember, we'd been talking about the Kennedys. The Kennedys had a farm in Catlett. There were pill dealings between the Kennedys and Shane. And there was a rule that when you went out to the farm, phones had to be turned off. The farm was roughly 15 minutes away. There have been rumors going around Nokesville since 2010 that they killed Shane and put him through the wood chipper on the farm. Did you go out to the farm? No. Connie Miller and Sheila Riggleman, cousins of the Kennedys. Did you talk to them? No. What about the Cooks and the Kaisers? Because there was that heart pill deal that was set up by Emily. They were both interviewed in 2011. Cook refused to talk. Chris Kaiser detailed that pill deal. Did you speak to them in 2024? No. Did you talk to Anthony Kaiser's girlfriend who was present for the pill deals? No. Did you talk to Caitlin Kaiser, Chris's ex-wife, who allegedly said to her, quote, "I'll do to you what I did to Shane," end quote, and said that there was a different time frame when Chris Kaiser was freaking out about the Donahues? Didn't talk to her. He didn't ask Emily about the pill deal with the Kaisers. He didn't ask Emily if she had expressed that Shane was going to confront the Kaisers. Didn't ask about the farm. And he says he didn't do any of that because it had already been asked by other detectives. He asked in 2014, did Emily Kinnaman secure an immunity agreement in this case? He said he didn't follow up on that because it wasn't important to his investigation. What about Alan Lamb and David Slatehouse? Joy Downey. Joy Downey knew Daniel Gould. Daniel Gould said that he passed the polygraph by taking beta blockers. Didn't talk to her. Then he asked about new physical evidence, the black lockbox that had been retrieved from the Donahues during the investigation. So that's that black box that we kept on seeing on
the pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which now we're just finally figuring out what the hell that was even about. So that was a lockbox retrieved from the Donahues during his investigation. And again, 2 handguns were also handed over by the Donahues.
But not this all happened in 2024.
In 2024,
right?
Yeah. Because he's asking about the new physical evidence in the case. That's basically it. There weren't, Tim's fingerprints on any of these things or anything like that. How many cell phones does Shane Donahue have? Well, he used 2 and he had just bought one. And there might have been one more that Emily Kinnaman may have seen at some point. Then he asked him about the search of the Hickerson farm. Did you find anything? He said, well, we found a truck back in the woods that had been shot up. They took metal detectors, they dug around, they found like some Civil War relics, belt buckles, things like that. But that's it. And then the cross was over.
Jesus.
Bilton redirected, and he said that he didn't interview the people that, Sloan had brought up because they'd either already been interviewed or were irrelevant. As far as the Kennedys go, Shane hadn't contacted them on the 22nd and didn't contact anyone for a ride. Their point is, again, Shane didn't drive. He's in a rural area. If Shane ended up somewhere else, how would he have gotten there?
Sure.
He couldn't have walked to Catlett. Like, he would have had to have a ride, but he didn't contact anybody for a ride. And Tim, according to his own story, didn't give him a ride anywhere. As for that truck that was shot up, that was searched because Craig Matong had told them there was a gun buried near an old truck on Tim Hickerson's property. So they're thinking that was the murder weapon.
Okay.
So they found the truck, which partially corroborated Craig's story. They just didn't find the gun. And he said that the people that he did interview in his reinvestigation, he interviewed because they weren't followed up with enough in the original investigation. And that in terms of the rumors about Shane, he followed up on most of them. Some were absurd. One was a letter from somebody in jail who said that a senator had hired a hitman to kill Shane.
Okay.
So, yeah. And that was it. He was excused.
I mean, that showed that both investigators were solely focused on Tim. And they didn't really want to explore any other option.
That's what it seems like. And I think that when you have the prosecution giving the opening argument of this case was reinvestigated.
And all roads led to Tim Hickerson.
Yep. I think the defense did a good job of saying, no, they weren't actually.
Yeah, they just didn't look into any other roads.
Yeah. And the roads that led to Tim were the same roads that you guys had in 2010.
Yeah.
That didn't end in an arrest.
Right.
So after that, the jury was excused and the defense put in a motion to strike. Basically, this is a common tactic when the prosecution is done with their case. Because that was it. That was the prosecution's case. And at no point did they present a cohesive narrative about what they think happened that day.
Yeah.
I don't think they did a good job at showing motive.
I mean, as far as I can tell, there really wasn't any motive.
Yeah.
I mean, there was more motive for Shane to kill Tim than the other way around.
Right. And there were points scored with, again, like potentially with the cell phone. I think it's stronger that there weren't any calls that Shane could have made to ask for a ride.
Right. But they barely touched on that.
They barely touched on it. And, the defense had spent the entire trial hammering home that there could have been other phones. I was just sitting there going like, how? Like, how is this all they have? After 15 years, how could they not have done a better job of stringing the story together? Because I was just looking back at my notes on Tim Hickerson's bond appeal, which was in November of 2024. And although Tim was granted bond, the prosecution did a much better job of cohesively telling a story. And so based on what I heard, I didn't hear anything that was like, oh shit, this guy's guilty. But they presented it enough to make me think, okay, once we get to the trial and we get to really hear all the evidence, this is going to make sense. Like, I see like why this is being brought. They still have very much an uphill battle. But like in November 2024, I was thinking, okay, I see where we're going with this. It's going to be tough, but maybe Shane can get justice. A year later, I'm sitting in the courtroom wondering what the hell I just watched. So Brandon Slow, this is after a lunch break, he got up and summarized the evidence, basically in a much more succinct way than I've done up to this point. He said that the Commonwealth was relying on circumstantial evidence that a mortal wound occurred in Prince William County. Now, proving the venue where a murder took place is part of what you need to prove when you're charging someone with a murder. And he said usually that's perfunctory. Because usually it's like, somebody shot, the body's there, you know where the shooting took place, right? So like it's not even something that you really have to work at proving. He said, but it's not perfunctory here because the Commonwealth hasn't proven where the death took place.
Or if there was even a death.
Exactly. De Jesus could not pinpoint the location of the phone. He could give a range, but the technology in 2010 wasn't there to pinpoint it like it is now. The phones could have been out of minutes. And he says, I don't know how they could circumstantially prove that a crime was carried out in Prince William County. He said a hearing is required to have someone declared dead after 7 years in Virginia, but not even that was done. So Shane Donahue's never been declared legally dead.
Right.
He said there's no forensic evidence in this case and no evidence that a death came from a criminal act. He talked a little bit more about, no body cases and no body cases that formed the case law basis had much different circumstances than this case that allowed them to prove it. And he said conviction cannot rest upon conjecture, which is from Little John versus the Commonwealth. And he said, what have we really learned over 2 days? A lot of these witnesses don't offer much. The best you could say is that maybe Shane was upset about an unrelated theft. Maybe he was annoyed with Tim, but animosity hasn't been proven.
Right.
In order to prove a murder charge, you have to prove that there was an unlawful killing. You have to prove criminal agency. And again, there's just no evidence that a criminal act occurred. And he said, quote, they don't have the law because they don't have the facts. He said the case was brought in 2024 because of Craig Matong, Gretchen Gephardt, and Sergeant Seekley. 2 out of 3 of these people did not testify. Quote, we may know why, but that's not an evidence, end quote. And what I did hear later is that Craig Matong completely changed his story.
Get the fuck out. Really?
Yeah. And that's why they couldn't call him.
Shit.
So Sweet got up for his rebuttal and said the circumstantial evidence proves that Tim Hickerson expressed malice and consciousness of guilt throughout the criminal timeline. Burglary. Intent can be proven. He admitted to the burglary. He lied during his first interview, then admitted to it in a subsequent interview. Which would have been fucking great if we had heard that.
Yeah. Also, they had that back in 2010 also.
Yeah.
So, why didn't they arrest him for that then?
Right. Then, the second-degree murder charge. The killing of Shane was done with malice. In terms of the corpus delicti, the whole there isn't a body thing, the evidence is overwhelming that Shane was murdered by Tim Hickerson.
No, it's not. You can say that all you want. There's no actual evidence that he's even dead.
Shane has been gone without a trace for 15 years. And then he says that the body shouldn't be on his property statement as incriminating.
Oh, so now he brings this up.
Yeah.
Didn't want to, point that out to the jury when they were actually listening to it.
Right. Oh, and speaking of which, the jury isn't in the courtroom when all this is going on.
Right.
Because this is a motion to strike.
Yeah.
So the jury's gone. So the jury's still not hearing any of this, by the way. He said that the burglary is essential because it determines a pattern of criminal exploitation and fear of exposure. And he said that it's, quote, logically impossible that Shane up and started a new life. Which, I mean, I agree with. And I do appreciate the fact that the defense brought that up, but they weren't hanging their hat on it.
No, because there's plenty of other non-evidence for them to work with.
He said that Shane left his glasses and his contacts. And so I wrote a question. I said, well, wait a second. Did he have multiple pairs? Because Shane couldn't see without his glasses. Mm-hmm. So what was he wearing on the 22nd? And if his glasses and contacts were there and he didn't have other pairs, does that mean that he did make it into his house after Tim dropped him off?
Mm-hmm.
That was just a question I had during this. Sweet said that the cell phones going off meant that he couldn't have arranged transport out of town, which I think is a good point.
Except that there's at least one additional phone.
Right.
That we know about.
That we don't know if it was ever.
The phone number.
Because we don't know if it was ever turned on or what.
Right.
He said that the Hickerson farm was 100 acres and that Tim Hickerson had exclusive control over Shane Donahue and his movements, meaning that he was driving him.
Yeah.
Then he's talking about malice, because that's another thing they have to prove. They said that Tim's conduct proves malice. He had financial motive and faced criminal exposure. He had that $500 debt that provided motive. Then he just said Tim Hickerson was also involved in transporting firearms with scratched off serial numbers.
Where the hell was that?
That was what I was wondering. Hadn't heard a single word about that in trial. If there was some reason why he couldn't talk about that in trial, how are you bringing it up here as one of the things that's proving your case?
Yes, right.
So, either he couldn't bring it up, in which case it doesn't matter. You can't use it to prove
malice.
Yeah.
Right.
Or you forgot to bring it up.
Yeah. This is crazy.
Oh, yeah. And then there's another one. Then he says that there was acute personal anger toward Shane from Tim. And he said there was a confrontation between the two of them about a Xanax pill that was found in Tim's mom's car. Tim had confronted Shane about the pill because he didn't want his mom to find out that he was using drugs.
When did that occur?
Never in the trial.
I mean, when did the argument even occur?
No idea, because it was never brought up at trial.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been an argument that they had a year prior to that.
Yeah, or it could have been that day. No idea, because it was never brought up in trial. Then he said that there was a cover-up and that Tim purchased a new gun. But again, we learned that the new gun was purchased the day after Shane went missing.
Right.
So I don't know how that proves anything.
Yeah.
And he said that Tim lied about where Shane was. Considering the totality of evidence, the jury can reject Tim's self-serving statements. Oh, and then on to concealing the body. Evidence is sufficient for malicious intent and concealment. Shane's body is undiscovered, and the last location contains Hickerson Farm. Then he says there was a psychological confession of guilt when he was confronted with cell phone evidence. I don't know when this confrontation was, by whom, or anything, but he said that Tim stuttered and said, I don't know.
When
don't know.
Did that happen?
Don't know. Didn't hear it. Have no idea. And then the no, it shouldn't be statement shows malicious intent in concealing the body.
Yeah, but again, the jury never heard that. Or they did hear it, but he didn't really say anything about it.
Now, Sloan did his rebuttal, and he basically said that Daniel Gould and Emily Kinnaman were impeached. They can't be trusted, whatever. Now, this is what's important. At that moment, the prosecution had rested its case. The defense had not put on their case. So at this point, in terms of the motion to strike, the judge has to look at the evidence in a favorable light toward the prosecution. So she said the motion to strike is denied. Then she asked the defense, are you going to call any witnesses? The defense said no. She then said, so does the defense rest? He says yes. Now at that point, now that the defense has put on their case, even though they didn't put on a case, but technically they had, she asked if he wants to renew his motion to strike. He said yes. So at that point, because both sides have gone, she has to just look at it neutrally.
Right.
And this is when everything fell apart. Because instead of calling the jury back in and telling the jury that the defense wasn't going to call any witnesses, and instead they were going to start closing arguments, the judge said, quote, "It is undisputed that we have lost Shane. That is a loss that his family will feel for the rest of their lives." End quote. But then she said basically that no rational fact finder could look at the evidence presented and say that Tim did it. So because of that, the motion to strike was granted. Tim Hickerson was acquitted. And because the jury had been seated, double jeopardy attached. So it's over. It was an incredibly emotional scene in the courtroom. Tim's family had been there throughout the trial. When he was acquitted, they of course got up and hugged each other and, started crying, and everybody was obviously thrilled because they believe in Tim's innocence 100%. And they believe that he's been harassed for 15 years for something he had nothing to do with. And for them, that was justice. The prosecution couldn't prove their case because he was innocent. And now it's over. And now he gets to go on and live his life. Shane also had family in the courtroom, including both of his parents. His mother, Donna, had not been attending the hearings because her cancer's back. She's not doing well, but she made sure to show up for the trial. It was so hard sitting there and watching the celebration on one side and the devastation on the other. There were a lot of tears from Shane's family, and the first thing that his dad said was, "What about Shane's rights?" His mother started crying and yelled, "My daughter killed herself." There was a lot more of a commotion. Eventually, the deputy had to lead the Donahues out, told them to leave first. The Hickersons stayed behind. They left. I just tried to melt into the wall because it just felt, it's just such an intimate moment. Just didn't feel like I should be witnessing this,
Yeah.
It was very, very painful. I've had a couple weeks now to reflect on everything, and I just cannot believe that this is what the Commonwealth decided to do for the Donahues after 15 years. I sat through numerous hearings, 2 days of a trial that was supposed to last almost 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more confused about what happened on March 22nd, 2010 than I was when I walked in. I don't know what happened to Shane. I don't know who's responsible for it. I mean, based on the evidence that the prosecution presented, because the defense didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Based on the evidence that the prosecution presented, I don't think Tim, if he had anything to do with this, was solely responsible for it.
Yeah.
Just from a logistical standpoint.
Right.
One of the beliefs, apparently, that the family has is that Tim set Shane up that day and that he took him to Hickerson Farm where there were other people waiting for him. And that maybe Tim was involved physically in whatever happened to Shane after that, or maybe he wasn't.
But there's no evidence of any of that.
There isn't. But that's the only thing that could potentially make sense when you're looking at the CCTV footage of him at the gun store an hour later. If he kind of sold Shane out and somebody else was responsible for the actual murder and the disposal of the body, then yeah, he could be at the gun store an hour later with some cash.
Yeah.
Maybe knowing that Shane was being killed, maybe having no idea. Maybe thinking Shane was just being robbed or beaten up or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that to me makes sense with the timeline. But again, it's all speculation and nothing remotely like that was presented as evidence in court.
I'm with you. I don't, this is, after hearing all of this, and I wasn't there for it, but after hearing all of this, I mean, I'm leaning more towards Tim not having anything to do with this.
But if Tim truly didn't have anything to do with it, then where did Shane go?
I don't know.
The other theory that, could show Tim's innocence is that Tim dropped Shane off and somebody was waiting for Shane at Shane's house.
Right.
And whatever happened to Shane happened there.
Or he was taken somewhere else.
Yeah. And that Tim truly didn't have anything to do with it. But the only way that works is if the cell phone data really was as squishy as the defense made it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
If that ping could have actually meant that Shane was at his house and not the Hickerson farm.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I was reading some of the social media comments after the verdict, from Share Music's story, because she was there with me the entire time. She's a reporter for the Prince William Times. She's been covering this. I've been looking at the comments, and the Hickerson supporters are like, this should have never been brought to trial. Like, they didn't have the evidence. They didn't have a case. Obviously, from their perspective, I get that. And clearly, at the end of the day, they didn't have the evidence. They didn't have a case. But from our perspective, as somebody who's been doing a podcast on missing people for over 200 episodes, how many cases has there been a very clear suspect?
Right.
Where we've thought, Jesus Christ, just arrest them. Just take the shot.
Yeah.
And the thing with this one is, it didn't work. They didn't have the evidence. They didn't have the case, but they could have had more than they did. And I was looking back at my notes from the bond appeal hearing, and I'm like, they had more. They had more then. They were more together a year ago than they were now. This whole thing felt like, oh shit, I have a project due tomorrow and I haven't read the book.
Right. Which is crazy because, again, 15 years and they had a year to prep for it.
Yeah.
It's not like this was a last minute, this is sprung on me, now I have to put together a case.
Yeah.
They had a whole year to prep for this. And from your description, they seemed unorganized. They didn't hammer any points home that could have presented evidence that Tim did it. I mean, it didn't seem like they had anything.
They didn't. And if they didn't think they were there, if they didn't think they had it, there was no need for them to arrest Tim Hickerson in September of 2024.
Right.
What's the difference? It had been 14 years at that point. September 2024, March 2025, June 2020. What the fuck difference does it make at that point?
Right. Get your ducks in a row first.
Get your ducks in a row if you're going to do it.
Right.
And maybe you'll still lose. And because, there are a lot of things like, oh, well, Shane's mom is dying. They want to do this for the Donahues. Okay. That's been said in a disparaging way. But okay. If that's what it takes for cops to actually look into something, fine. I don't care about that. I don't think that's a bad thing. But if you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're going to win. But you need to put on a better show than you did here. Because they, in my opinion, did a disservice to the Donahue family by that performance. And also, if you believe that not only did the prosecution not provide enough evidence to convict him, but that Tim is factually innocent, then they did a huge disservice to the Hickerson family too.
Yeah.
It was just an absolute disaster all around. And I feel terrible about it. It was really hard to watch. So I want to just end real quick with two statements from each side, one from the prosecution, one from the defense. These are statements that they came out with right after the verdict. Well, it wasn't, I don't know if you could even really call it a verdict, the dismissal.
The ruling.
The ruling. Amy Ashworth, who's the Commonwealth's attorney for Prince William, said, quote, "We are disappointed in the ruling today. We have put a lot of work into this case and believed there was sufficient evidence to allow the case to go to the jury, who could then deliberate and decide the guilt or innocence of Mr. Hickerson. Sadly, the jury will not get that opportunity." End quote. Like, okay.
I mean, we've said it. Like, I don't understand how they could think that they had enough evidence. Like, it's mind-blowing.
It's certainly not the way it was presented.
Yeah.
And like, listen, I'm not a lawyer. I've said that many, many times. But I did a video during the lunch break when the judge was considering the motion to dismiss. And I said, I think this might happen. I think that this is not even going to make it to the jury because I didn't see it. I didn't see the evidence.
Yeah.
So this is the statement from Tim Hickerson's defense. Quote, "The Commonwealth had access to everything compiled over the past 15 years regarding the disappearance of Shane Donahue on March 22nd, 2010. This included more than 70 witness interviews, multiple polygraph examinations, numerous property searches, and the full range of investigative tools available to law enforcement. All information known to investigators was presented in open court." Now, let me break in here, disagree with that last sentence because when Sweet was saying all that stuff at the end, he was talking about stuff that wasn't presented in open court, which was mind-blowing.
Yes.
But back to the statement. Quote, "The Commonwealth's evidence against Mr. Hickerson was legally insufficient. As the court found, no rational trier of fact could find proof of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt for any of the charged offenses. For that reason, the trial judge acquitted Mr. Hickerson of all charges. As the court noted, there are no winners in this matter." End quote. There's more to it, but I'm going to break in again. I was really confused about how they couldn't at least get him on the burglary. But apparently, Tim's confession wasn't enough. They needed corroborating proof of the burglary, which I think they could have gotten. I mean, I think there's solid testimony about that. I think if they had pushed a little bit harder, they could have gotten the burglary, potentially, but they didn't. All right, so I'm going back to the statement now. Quote, "We recognize that the court of public opinion may have reached conclusions long before this case ever came to trial. But now, for the first time, everything known about the case has been aired publicly through sworn testimony and admissible evidence. The court of public opinion often operates from emotion rather than fact and is too frequently influenced by rumor, speculation, and conjecture. A courtroom, by contrast, is governed by rules of evidence and the requirement that guilt be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. The trial of Mr. Hickerson has ended in an acquittal. This decision, grounded in the evidence and the law, must be accepted and respected even by those who may disagree with it. Lastly, we address the comments made by Ms. Ashworth following the ruling. Collectively, our team has more than 25 years of experience in criminal law, including a former prosecutor with over a decade of experience handling similar cases. We question the judgment involved in bringing these charges based on the evidence presented. The evidence was never sufficient to charge Mr. Hickerson. Moreover, Ms. Ashworth's suggestion that the court's ruling deprived the jury or the community of a decision on a legally sufficient case is inappropriate, inaccurate, and unsupported by both the facts and the law. We do not take the result lightly, nor the gravity of this case, but we cannot allow a public official to offer unchecked statements that mischaracterize the process or the court's ruling. We respectfully request and thank you in advance for continued respect for the privacy of Mr. Hickerson and his family as he begins to move on from this long and difficult process. End quote.
Wow. I agree with everything that he said.
Stop, you're really going to feed into his ego.
I mean, I'm sorry, but like...
And I say that because you guys, I haven't talked about this at all, but I've talked to Ethan about this. Brandon Sloan, Tim Hickerson's attorney, like made it a point to talk to me like every single day of this. And he like would talk to me about the videos I was making and like kept on asking me about the podcast and stuff like that. So I know he's going to listen to this. So like,
well, I don't mean to feed into his ego, but he brings up very solid points.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it is inappropriate for the Commonwealth attorney to say that the judge's decision has deprived justice.
Because it hasn't. And okay, and I do want to bring that up. And I think we alluded to this in the very beginning about the Hickerson family and their relative power in Nokesville.
Right.
Because along with the comments that I've been reading, I saw some that said, oh my God, the judge is in their pocket. This is all like, who did they pay off? All of this stuff. And listen, I am not coming on here defending Tim Hickerson. Because like I said, I still don't know if he's guilty or innocent. Yeah. And unfortunately, this trial, like, I don't know. I just know that they didn't have the evidence to prove it. In terms of his factual guilt or innocence, I still don't have enough information to make that determination. Whatever. Point is, Judge Horan did an excellent job. She was fair. She listened closely. She gave latitude to both sides. And she ruled the way she ruled at the end because legally, I don't believe she had any other choice.
Yeah.
And again, I'm a civilian, so take that for what it's worth. But she was an excellent judge. Nobody paid her off. She's not in the pocket of anybody. Like, shit like that really is absurd. And I'm going back to, again, the whole idea of like the Hickerson family being so powerful and like whatever. It came out in the trial, like I mentioned, that Donna Donahue worked for the sheriff's office prior to this. And Brian talked about all of his friends who were cops. So it seems like they had like a good amount of influence within law enforcement. I didn't hear anything saying that the Hickersons had any amount of influence in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. It keeps on pointing to the fact that Tim's dad was the fire chief for Nokesville for like 20 whatever years. Okay. Like that was a volunteer position.
Right.
I don't think that has the amount of cachet to get somebody to cover up a murder for 15 years.
Yeah.
A couple of days before we are recording this, we had a pest control guy come to our house. You know what that guy also does on the side? He's the chief for a local fire department here.
Right.
But his main job is working for a pest control company. I also don't think he could get a murder covered up for 15 years.
Right. That kind of thought is just ridiculous. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But,
yeah. But
like,
listen, and yes, corruption absolutely happens, especially when you're talking about small towns and, you know, shit like that. Like if somebody's telling you, yeah, people in Nokesville are corrupt, I mean, I'll believe you. But
sure, but it wasn't Nokesville Police Department.
It was Prince William County Police, which, as we pointed out,
is a huge county.
A huge county. You work for the government. We've said that on the show before, so we can say it. Mm-hmm. You work for the government. One of the biggest lessons I've learned from being with you for over a decade is the government is full of a lot of people who have no idea what the fuck they're doing. And I think that a lot of what people point to as conspiracies are often just incompetence.
I'm not going to agree or disagree with you. In case, you know, any of my supervisors are listening to this.
No, not them. They're all brilliant and perfect. Didn't mean you guys. No, but seriously, like and I worked in local government. It's like just full of people who are just there trying to get a job done.
That's it.
You know?
Everybody's just trying to go home at the end of the day.
Exactly. They're clocking in, they're clocking out. Most of the time, they're not putting effort into grand conspiracies. And sometimes when cases get fucked up like this, it's because people are just not very good at their jobs. Anyway, Matthew Sweet is one of the attorneys who's in charge of the Mamta Kafle case. So I feel like it's going to be really awkward when that resumes next year and I'm back in the courthouse again.
That's provided he listens to this.
Hopefully he doesn't. And hopefully, because he always ignores me in the courthouse, which I appreciate, honestly, and I hope he keeps on doing it. Unfortunately, that's where we are on the Shane Donahue case. It's a sad ending all around because Shane's still gone. And likely things are going to remain that way. My hope as somebody who spends a lot of time talking about unsolved missing persons cases like Shane's, is that the lesson that is taken away from this isn't don't take these cases to trial, especially if it's been years, especially if it's cold. I hope the lesson is these people still deserve justice, no matter how long it's been. And in order to get justice for that person, you have to work twice as hard. These cases aren't cut and dry. These aren't cases where somebody's shot on CCTV in front of a crowd of people. These cases have gone cold. And when you're dealing with a case that might not have forensics, that might not have witnesses, you have to take special care in building it. To anyone who might be listening who is even peripherally involved in cases like this isn't a sign to give up on them. This is a sign to work harder. Shane Donahue has been missing from Nokesville, Virginia since March 22nd, 2010. He's a white male with brown hair and brown eyes. At the time of his disappearance, he was approximately 5'11" and 160 pounds. Shane was 23 when he went missing. He would be 39 today. If you have any information about the disappearance of Shane Donahue, please contact the Prince William County Police Department at 763-792-7279. You can see all the sources for this episode along with photos and videos at our website, andthentheywere.gone.com.
And be sure to follow us on social, And Then They Were Gone Pod on Facebook and at ATTWG Pod on Instagram and TikTok. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and consider leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It will help new listeners find us. And the more people that listen, the more chances we have of bringing someone home.
And we'll see you here next week for a brand new episode.
See you next week.
And Then They Were Gone is hosted by Kona Gallagher and Ethan Flick. All research, writing, and editing is done by me, Kona Gallagher. Theme music is The Stork by Ketsa. Additional music is provided by Kai Engel. And Then They Were Gone is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.